Hey, welcome to the Atheist Roundtable. What's going on? We got Adam Rich in the house. What's up, man? What's going on, Adam?
What's going on, Pasta Mike? How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing just fine, man. And thank you for showing up to the Atheist Roundtable, or as they like to call it, TART. It's kind of like a sassy little nickname.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get straight into it. We get word that there's a nice spoken gentleman on TikTok that is putting out the word that, hey, presuppositions aside, Christianity is the true word of, or it was a true worldview per se. Atheism is in fact a religion, and there's a little bit of skepticism on your end as far as science is concerned. Evolution may be false. I don't know. I'm actually needing to get some clarity myself on this. But how about I shut the hell up? Why don't you go into a little bit of depth about your position, and then I'll get the fellas in here to ask you some questions.
Yeah. Well, first, thanks for having me on, guys. All of you. I appreciate you having the conversation especially with somebody that you probably don't agree with very much in this particular field. But I am a Christian. I don't claim to be like a Baptist or Catholic or Presbyterian or any of the certain denominations. I think that mostly falls with certain traditions that they follow and certain things, and I just don't think that part of it is the most important element, and certainly it's not mentioned in the Bible at all, any of those. So I don't think that necessarily is the big key goal of it, but I just call myself a Christian. I do believe the Bible. I believe there is some metaphorical things in it, but for the most part I do believe that the majority of what you are reading is written down as fact and as history, not just a fictional fairy story that I hear so much about. But I do believe that. And as far as like I started doing TikTok, well, when I first started doing TikTok, I never really had any intention of even talking about God or the Bible or Christianity or anything. It just like kind of happened one day. And I don't even remember what exact video it was, but something just kind of triggered me wanting to just mention it. And I was doing a bunch of like if you go back and look at some of my early TikToks, it's a bunch of nonsense and stupid stuff. But I started getting I made one video. I want to say maybe it had to do with either morality or evolution or something like that. And then I just, the response and the comments that I got, it just led me to doing follow-ups and answering those questions and then answering other questions. And then next thing I know, I was just basically doing it time and time and time again. It's just, it seems like endless conversation and stuff. So I really enjoy it. And I love talking to not only Christians, but I actually, if you look at my earlier stuff, it's actually geared more towards atheists and evolutionists and things like that, just because I like having the conversation, regardless if it's going to lead to me getting a lot of hate or not. I don't really care. It's just I like having conversations with people who I might not agree with, or people that I just like getting the information out there and let the chips fall where they may, basically.
Absolutely. It's funny because you and I almost came from the same place then, because my daughter, who's way underage for TikTok, says, "Hey, I got TikTok." I was like, "What's TikTok?" This is about a year ago. I'm like, "Oh, it looks fine. You can have it." She's 10, right? So I was like, "Yeah, you can have it." And then I hear, I don't even know if I should say it, but I hear like, "Bust the pussy open." I'm like, "What the hell?" So I grab her tablet. I'm like, "Yeah, you're not having this. Give me this TikTok." So then I start scrolling through TikTok and I'm looking at it and I'm like, "Oh, I think I'll just delete this app." And as I go to delete it, I start to see this abundance of like negativity toward atheism, and also like the oversaturated view on almost like a poor perspective of Christianity and religion. So I start to look at it more, and I'm like, "Oh, I could probably have a field day with satire on here." So I kind of took the account over, and I kept the account. But I think the algorithm works it out. That's probably what happened to you as well. I'm sure you're on TikTok. You're not worrying about Christianity per se, and you're doing your own thing. But you're probably seeing a lot of things that you like and touch. It's interactive, obviously. Next thing you know, you post a video on Christianity. It likes that. That algorithm's going to like that. It's going to push you to the forefront, and it wants your comment section to blow up. That engagement. I think I've even been in your comment section, and you're really cool, by the way. But I will give you that credit.
Thanks, dude.
But before we bring on Mr. Ben G to chat with you, I don't want you to have to go and reiterate too much to the guys, because you're going to systematically talk to some of the Atheist Roundtable folks. Can you give your position as to why it is you're so strong in your belief as a Christian, and actually why you seem to think that atheism is false?
Well, it's a big collection of things. It's not, I wish there was like one or two things I could tell you or show you. It's just over the course of my life, it's just a collection of personal experience. It's a collection of faith. It's a collection of historical evidence. It's a collection of logic, like the way it makes sense. It like, I mean, it's hard when somebody just says, hey, there's talking snakes and there's a burning bush. This doesn't seem logical. So I fully understand that element of it. But at the same time, when you take into account everything that it says, and then you follow up with real history, and then you see historical documents that are written, to me, honestly, the best way I could put it is it's like taking a ton of different puzzle pieces, and when you throw them all on the table, you don't see much of anything. It just looks like a bunch of chaos and randomness. But when you start taking each individual little piece of evidence and you put it together, it slowly starts adding up and making so much sense that to a person on the outside that has been a full on atheist their whole lives, it's easy to, I could totally understand why you wouldn't believe it, and why it sounds like a fairy tale, and why it sounds so far out there and crazy. But just throughout my life, it's just a big collection of different things in different categories, different areas at different times, that it's, for me, it's almost impossible. I don't know how I personally couldn't believe, just from all the things that I've personally put together. But it's not, like I said, I don't sit here and assume that everyone comes from the same place as me. Everyone's got a different perspective, different way of life, different upbringing. So I fully understand why it feels so unbelievable and so far out and just crazy. So I don't, when I go on TikTok, and maybe some of you guys that know this, have seen my channel, I don't fully go out there with the intention of insulting and burying atheists or anything like that. I just go out there with the intention of trying to spread the information that I have either read, seen, or believe. And that's all I'm trying to do. And if atheists attack me for it, it doesn't really bother me all that much. I don't really care about a stranger's opinion. Now, if it's my wife saying those things, it's a bit different. It hurts a little different, but no, at the same time, it's just trying to get information out there to people and having this conversation. Like, that's why I appreciate you guys having me on, because I know you may not agree with what I'm saying, and I doubt you're going to agree after I'm off. But the fact that you're willing to have somebody with a totally different perspective than you come onto the show and just represent my feeling or my belief or what I think or whatever, that means a lot. So I appreciate you guys doing that.
Oh, no, that's awesome. In fact, I do agree with that. I also agree with your reasoning as to why you're on the app, because it's almost the same reason I'm on there. So I support your right for freedom of speech and for what you're doing. So kudos, man. And also, I like your approach. So if I have a fellow atheist in my comment section that's being disrespectful, I'm done. I don't engage with those folks.
Right.
So they're on both sides of the fence, man.
Well, I'm sorry not to cut you off, but I agree with you, actually. Even when it comes to Christians, I get some Christians on there that are like, oh, you don't know, you're going to hell and all this stuff. And it's like, dude, that's not the approach. Like, first off, most atheists already understand the story for the most part. I mean, understand that about the heaven and hell aspect. You telling them that they are going to hell is not going to change their mind. I just think that that's a very awful approach, and it's very judgy. And I understand why Christians look so bad all the time, to be honest with you. And I'm just trying to show that we're not all like that. It's not that simple, I guess. It's,
Yeah, I think that is a level of intelligence it takes to understand that you can't stereotype everybody the same. Right. So yes, there are some Christians that are like that, but there are also some Christians that are really cool and want to come on the show and chat with us, like you. So
thank you.
But I don't have a drum roll, but I do have a guy named Ben G, and I'm going to pop him up right here. Look at this handsome guy. Here he is. Boom. Oh, look at this fella. So I know you guys were chatting backstage, so I'm going to turn it over to Ben G, and I'm going to go chill backstage in the Atheist Lounge and drink some Michelob Ultra. No, I'm not. I'm lying. I'm going to drink some whiskey. Anyway, talk to you guys later.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
All right. What's up, Adam?
What's up, Ben? Benji?
Hey, man. Yeah, so I started doing the TikTok thing like a month ago. I'm on there like at Benji Atheist. I did do a little bit of research as far as just like watching some of your TikToks. I did have to like keep myself from commenting or jumping on some of those things, just so that way when we talk, it could really be good for the first time.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, it's I mean, that's awesome. It's very entertaining, and definitely everybody should go check your channel out.
Thank you.
Cool. My first question then is just I like to talk about like why people believe God exists, like the claim God exists. So I mean, like, and I'll just kind of go straight forward. Like, do you believe God exists?
Yeah.
Okay. And then how confident are you that God exists? Like, if you could put your confidence level between like 1 and 100, where would you put yourself?
I don't know, man. I don't know. Like hypothetical
Mhm.
numbers, I don't know. I'm extremely confident. Is the best way I can put it. And I mean, I don't know a number. I have no idea. I mean, of course, because and here's why I say it. I would normally say probably 99% if I had to pick a number. And the only reason I say that is not because I'm obviously not 100%. I don't have anything physical that I can hand you that says, see, it's signed by God. Obviously exists, but at the same time, from all the things that I have personally been through, experienced, seen, believed, read, all these things together, I don't. There's moments where I can have a doubt, but it's gone from my head because of all the past experiences. Like there might be a moment where I'm just like, well, maybe, but then at the same time, then I'm like, well, no, because this, or whatever. So I'm extremely confident that there is, but at the same time, I'm not arrogant enough to say that yes, there absolutely is, and you guys are dumb for not believing that. You know what I mean? Like I fully understand why people don't, but at the same time, I just have so many internal, I guess, reasons for why I personally believe that. I couldn't put a number on it, but it'd be over 50%.
Sure. Well, that's great. I guess I had another question pop up while you're explaining. Are there any kind of like defining characteristics that you would give God, or like what separates the God that you believe in from, I don't know, like a pantheistic God or something like that?
Yeah. Well, obviously, I mean, I'm sure if you've read, I'm sure you heard like the omnipotent, the omnipresent. He's got the omnis. That's part of it. But the biggest reason that this God, I guess, would be because I've heard people say like, well, why, there's 4,000 gods. I don't believe in any of them. I just believe in one less than you, or whatever. But at the same time, when I hear people talk about the creation, like who created God, this is the defining thing about him that is different than any other god. He's not created. And if he was created, then there would be zero reason for me to want to believe in him in the first place. Because by definition, any created god is not worth worshiping. And this is what a lot of, I'm not saying you personally, but this is what a lot of atheists do struggle with, is the idea of something being always everlasting, eternal, there not being a beginning or an end to it. There's always, when you say that something came first, or that you believe that, like, I think God is timeless, and it's very hard to wrap your head around. Even myself, it's hard to wrap my head around, even though I believe it. It's just the idea that time doesn't apply to him. If you create time, you can't be made of it, because you can't create anything if it already exists. And so when we say that God is eternal, that he's timeless, he's omnipresent, it doesn't just mean he's in all places. It means he's in all times as well. He's past, present, and future. And he talks about that in the Bible. It does say, he says, I'm the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. And so the idea that, why is my God different than the other ones? It's that this God is the only God that isn't created. And if he is created, he's not worth being worshiped. He's The fact that he is the beginning of all things and creates all things is why I would only worship that God. That's the only one that has see, I guess it's like to try to sum it up real quickly. Any other God would basically be a lowercase g. The reason he's the uppercase G is because he is God, he's not a God. And
So like,
that's kind of the difference.
yeah, and so every other God then, but I guess, so within your view, by definition, then every other God must have been created by people.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like any other God that you would speak of, usually even as far as Zeus, this is one thing, because they say, well, he's just a part of mythology like Zeus and Thor. Well, the difference is Zeus had a weakness. They all have weaknesses, and the God of the Bible does not. There is no weakness. You can't harm him. You can't hurt his feelings. You can't, like, a lot of people think that we need to praise him, or why does he need praise? Why does he need us to pray? He doesn't need anything. When we do those things, it's more for our benefit than it is for him. So he doesn't need anything. He's self-sustaining. He's self-present. He's he's omnificent, which is a word that I recently learned.
Omnificent.
Yeah, which yeah, like I said, I just recently, it means that he's infinitely creative.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
I don't know if I've heard that one before either.
Right, yeah. And so I was just looking up different omnis, for instance, and one of those were attributed to him, and I didn't even know what the word meant, so I looked it up, and I was like, well, I guess it makes sense. If he can create anything and everything, he would have to have that quality as well. And so I think when we talk about that God of the Bible, it's not just about that story and that book. It's more about the idea that the beginning of everything is him and is of him. Like the creation of all things comes through him. And if there was a before him, he wouldn't be God. And so that's kind of like the definition of him, is that he, like the God that I believe in, the only one worth worshiping is one that does not need to be created, does not have a master, does not have something come before him. He is the before. He's the prime mover, as Aristotle and Socrates and all these guys said, the prime mover, the uncaused first cause. Because you have to get to that point. Like a lot of atheists don't seem to like go with that. They don't believe that. They believe in infinite regression. And I've kind of proven I don't know if you've seen it in the TikTok, but I've shown why you can't have infinite regression. You can't have it. It's not logically possible to have infinite regression, because if you have infinite causes, if something comes before every cause, then infinite reasons have to be a cause. Mm-hmm. And if there's infinite reasons that's a cause, then that means at some point in the past, I'm a cause and you're a cause. And this iPhone that I'm doing this on is a cause. And that's just, you can't have that. So obviously, and that's why I say even the ancient Greeks knew this. There has to be a prime mover, a beginner, a starter, the uncaused first cause. And that's what I attribute to God.
All right. Well, I guess like the next thing that I try to get into. So now that we've kind of got an idea of what God is, the God that you believe in. Next, I would just ask, and I know that Pasta kind of got into this. He said, why do you believe God exists? And I guess I wanted to go through a couple of those reasons with you. And so you said you're very confident. What are some of the things that make you extremely confident that God actually exists?
It's like I said, I mean, the easiest way I can say it is that it's just a collection of all of these things. But like some of the ones that I guess really zero it in is more of logic and philosophy, like what we just talked about with the infinite regression and the prime mover. He would fit that category. The idea of him not having a beginning, or like, for instance, if you go, even if you're using the universe looks as though there is a beginning to it. Everything is constantly expanding. It's expanding faster as we speak. Everything is speeding up with the amount that it's expanding outward. There's zero reason to believe that it's going to come back in unless you apply faith. You have to imagine that that's going to happen, because there is no evidence that says that the universe will ever collapse back on itself. There's nothing in the universe that shows that there would be a reason for it to come back. Now it could. I'm not saying it won't and it can't. I'm just saying it doesn't look as though that's going to happen. It looks like it's inflating like a balloon, and everything is, if you look at it out in every direction in space, everything has a red shift to it. Everything is moving away from us, but not just us. Everything's moving away from everything. And so it's got to be like, that means that just like a balloon, if it contracted, it would come back to one point. And that's what we call the Big Bang. That's the beginning. That's the start of, that seems to be the start of time, space, and matter. Now, I'm not saying that is the beginning of time, space, and matter.
Right. I wouldn't either.
But it does appear to be that way, even according to the leading atheist scientists and cosmologists. And
right.
So,
it appears to be the start, even though philosophically, well, not only philosophically, it's just that's the start of what we can observe. Anything that happened, and it's likely that things were happening before then. We just can't know anything about it.
Exactly. And I believe that things were happening before then too. I just believe that they were involving God and that they were in a different realm, which he's outside of our universe. If you think about it, if God exists, if the God that I'm talking about does exist, then he has to be outside of our universe in order to make it. Because like it's just like your computer, like the guy that made the first computer isn't inside the computer running around changing the buttons and hitting buttons and stuff. He's outside of the computer, and he set the computer in motion to be able to operate, has an operating system. And so if you look at the universe and say that that is the beginning of time, space, and matter, at least as far as we can tell, then whatever created time, space, and matter has to be, logically, it has to be timeless, spaceless, and immaterial. So when
Okay.
you think of any kind of a force or any being or anything that is timeless, meaning it doesn't have a beginning or an end, is spaceless, is unaffected by space, nothing can affect it, nothing can, inside and out of it, and immaterial, meaning nothing, no matter. There's no matter, there's no space, and there's no time. That to me sounds exactly like the traits of what you would see with God. And then to add in power, because whatever created this universe is obviously ultimately powerful, has to be, to make something this dramatically massive and huge, and all the laws and physics and order that there is to the universe. Whatever this force was that I believe is God, whatever that force is timeless, spaceless, immaterial, and powerful. And if you think that it's an inanimate object, meaning it doesn't have a mind, or it doesn't choose to do anything, well, then you would have to come up with some other forces before that force to put that force into motion. And so when you go back that far and you look at how it's timeless, spaceless, immaterial, powerful, and I would say personal, because it had to choose to do all these other things. If you take those 5 traits, that perfectly describes God. And it really gives a good example and reason, a logical reason. Now, like I said, I can't prove that it is God, but what I'm saying is, in my mind, logically, that does fit the bill.
So I think that brings up an interesting. Yeah, I think that brings up an interesting question. I was going to ask that my kind of follow up to that question is, if you didn't have logic or philosophy, or like if you didn't know anything about the Big Bang, if you didn't know anything about cosmology or philosophy, would you still put yourself at that high confidence that God actually exists?
I don't know if it would quite be as high or as low. I don't know. I mean, I've always believed in God long before I ever knew any of that stuff.
Well, yeah, I was about to say, so like to what degree does logic and philosophy make up your confidence that God actually exists?
Well, I don't know. I mean, like I said, it's a collection, those are big, but here's the thing is, like, when I was younger, I still had a high degree of confidence that God existed, just from other things that weren't involving that amount. I've always been a very logical person, as far as, like, my dad was always constantly preaching about logic. He loved he loved Spock from Star Trek, and like logic was always a big deal for me growing up, because it's the only thing in the world that helps you do and solve everything else. Because if something isn't logically possible, it can't exist. Like, for instance, a married bachelor. It's not logically possible, so you'll never see one. And you know that regardless if science can prove that or not. It's a fact based on the contradictory elements of what they both mean. Same thing as a one-ended stick.
Right.
Squared circle, things like that,
What I'm really trying to get at is, like, what are the things that build you up to a high confidence level? So if logic and philosophy, if without those things, so like say I have like a meter here of confidence that God exists, all right? And if you're telling me that logic and philosophy, without those things, if this doesn't change, I'm really, I guess, more interested in what gets you up to that point. Like, what are the different things? So you said it's a collection of things. So I'm down for it.
All of them would get me up to there, but I mean, like I said in the opening, that to me, it's like a puzzle. If you throw 1,000-piece puzzle onto the table and just random puzzle pieces, it doesn't look like anything. It doesn't mean anything. But when you start taking each individual puzzle piece and putting them together, now you start seeing a picture. So to answer your question, none of them on their own would get me to where I'm at. It's like a table. One leg of a table is not going to hold up the table. You need all 4 tables. You know what I mean? So it's all of them combined are what get me to where I'm at. But if I just one thing, and I don't know, it's going to convince you, you know?
Right. And so I'm starting to think about people. Are there any conspiracy theories that you just know are like wrong, or like any of them that are just like stupid and everything? Like, do you believe that we went to the moon?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I
So
think so. I mean, I would never
right.
say that like I guarantee it, but no, I mean, I believe it.
Like
Yeah, sure.
myself, I bet myself like I'm over 90% sure that we went to the moon.
Right.
Now there's plenty of people in the United States, and you can tell me if you disagree. There are plenty of people in the United States who make the claim. They're like, look, we've got this evidence, we've got photos, and like we know that they had the technology to create video. NASA's covering it all up.
Right.
If they said, I can't give you any one definite piece of proof, but here is a body of evidence or a body of things, and none of them on their own can do anything, but they're kind of using the same method. They're saying there's a body of evidence which says we didn't go to the moon. Do you think that they should be just as justified in their belief that we didn't go to the moon as you are that God actually exists?
Well, I think you need to, it depends on what the evidence is, or it depends on what logic they're producing. Because, like, I hear flat Earth. I'm not a flat earther. So I know a lot of people think that if you're a Christian, you believe that the Earth is flat. I don't know where I'm.
Never heard that. Yeah.
It's so, no, I get that all the time on my channel, which is unbelievable because it even says in Isaiah 40-22 that the Earth is round. So I don't know where they would, or it says the Earth is as a circle. But if you look in the actual ancient Hebrew text, you'll see that the word that is used to mean circle is actually more of a 3D/ball type. There's depth to it. It doesn't mean a flat plane.
Right.
It doesn't mean a stage, you know, and I've heard people say that, but if you actually look up the word that's used, you'll see the definition. It's round. It's a sphere.
So then let me just kind of cut down again into kind of like the reasons. Is there a single part of that collection of information that if you were to lack it, if it was to be missing or if it wasn't true, what would that piece of evidence be? Or what is that main component of that collection? Yeah.
You mean like what piece of evidence, if I found out was false, would make it all fall apart?
That's a really good rephrasing. Yeah.
I would say if you could prove that Jesus did not resurrect, then I would say the entire Bible is not even relevant. The problem is you can't. That's one thing that I like about the Bible is that there is 0 sentences in the Bible that are proven to be false. Now, there's a lot of sentences in the Bible that are believed to be false, but none of them have been proven without a shadow of a doubt that they're false. As a matter of fact, with the story of Jesus's resurrection, there is tons of information about this. Dr. Gary Habermas has written tons of books about this. He's actually in the process of writing a 5,000-page book of all the different evidences and stories and testimonies and things like that, as well as the history and how Christianity boomed. And it's just, there's so many things that in that story, there are things that you can't prove wrong, but there are a lot of things that you can prove right. And so I look at the Bible. That's one of the big things, I guess, if, you know, to circle back to what you were saying about why I was so convinced, even as a kid, is because as a kid, I understood, I mean, I guess not all of it, but I mean, as a kid, I realized the relevance and the truth behind what the Bible is saying and what isn't, what parts of it, the fact that none of it is proven false at this point is incredible to me. I mean, there's 40 plus authors, 66 books throughout over 1,500 years of writing. And to this day, none of it has been proven false, but there is a lot of scientific things in the Bible that have recently been discovered that the Bible said long before we ever knew it. Like, for instance, water in the earth, under the ocean floor. Now, it talks about that in the Bible, about water being under the ocean, in the earth, water coming up from the fountains of the deep to create Noah's flood. Now, it's claiming in the Bible that there was water under that ocean. I mean, now recently found that. Sorry.
And I'll stop because it's like, here's the thing. I agree that there's tons of factual information. I'm not one of those. I'm not necessarily a mythicist. I don't think it bothers me necessarily that or like the notion of Jesus existing doesn't bother me. Like I understand that there are plenty of people named Yeshua alive at the time, plenty of people who were doomsday sayers, like predicting the end of the earth, plenty of cults, plenty of like the Bacchus, like the god of wine had his own cult where they were like murdering people out in the woods. Like these things are common. People being crucified at the time were common. I don't have an issue with any of those. I guess my thing then, so the one thing that you would need in order to believe that God doesn't exist, I guess I'm also interested in, let's say Jesus did resurrect. What about that necessitates a God existing? So like if I'm focusing on the God claim, not necessarily Jesus, what about a resurrection demonstrates a God's existence?
Well, there's a few things. I mean, one, we don't ever see that happen. I mean, it's one thing for somebody to be dead for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, or something like that, and then come back. It's a whole other story for somebody to be dead for several days, be pierced through the side, beaten, thorns on the head, even crucified. To see anybody come back from that. It's never I mean, it's never been recorded if it has, but one of the biggest parts about that also is not just that some human being named Jesus did all that. It's who he claimed to be and then doing it. So if there is and this is why it's important, because if there is a God and if Jesus is who he says he is, then the fact that he claimed to be God and then was killed the way he was, like it was predicted many, many years before that, to do all that and then to rise after 3 days, like was also predicted before that, and then for there to not be a good explanation from anybody other than the fact that the disciples claim to have seen him after, and so did many other people. And you could say that, they may have just wanted to, maybe they lied, maybe it was hallucinations, all these things. But the one thing that doesn't make the slightest bit of logical sense, and like I said, I'm a big fan of logic, is that these disciples then changed everything about their lives and they went on the run. They went into hiding. They've gotten arrested. They were stoned to death. One of them was crucified upside down, allegedly. And one of them was banished off to an island to then write Revelation, John, the book, John. And there's no logical reason why people, because what was said at the time is that they stole the body. The disciples stole the body. That was the only logical reason, because nobody to this day has ever found Jesus's bones. And so it claimed that the disciples stole his body. Well, the disciples, if they stole his body, then that means they're admitting that this is a lie, clearly, because to believe that he resurrected or to tell people he resurrected, if they stole his body, they would know that he didn't resurrect.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is they completely changed their lives and then died for this supposed lie.
Yeah. So I guess there's like a couple things. So is it like the fact that Jesus claimed to? So that's interesting, and I'm really glad that we're having this segment, because I think I've only got about 2 or 3 minutes left, and then we're going to keep this moving forward. And I guess my own, really, I view my job as kind of summarizing how did you come to your conclusion that God exists? So if I had to summarize it, the biggest thing, so you've got a collection of evidences, or like a collection of facts. And then you're saying that the one thing, if we pulled the linchpin on that, if we proved that Jesus didn't resurrect, that would make the whole thing fall apart. And I guess my next question, just leading to the end of this segment, is what evidence do you have then that Jesus actually did resurrect? And then we'll allow kind of everyone else maybe to tack onto that.
Yeah, well, a lot of those things that I was just saying, I mean, there was plenty of witnesses. There was, it was written down historically in that time period and long after. There was respected, credible historians named Josephus and Tacitus, which came later. A lot of people think when I bring them up that I'm claiming that they lived with Jesus or lived at the same time, and they didn't. I know that. But these were respected, credible historians. These weren't guys that just wrote down stuff and then somebody goes, oh, yeah, that's true. These were guys that were known to be writing their actual history. And the fact that they wrote about Jesus and his death and the effects that he had and the supposed miracles, and they basically are verifying the same story outside of the Bible. And here's the key, though, about that. Neither of those two were Christian. The Jews were the ones that killed Christians.
Well, and Paul wasn't either. So like Paul,
that's another one.
Paul's my favorite. He's my favorite person to talk about when it comes to conversions. Yeah. So I guess you're saying that we don't ever see people resurrecting. I guess like I'm interested in. So if we understand that doesn't happen, and it is a miraculous claim. Would you say that were there any eyewitnesses to Jesus actually rising from the dead?
During him waking up? No.
Yeah.
He was inside the tomb.
Did anybody watch him walk out of the tomb?
No, but many people have seen him
afterwards. Right. Yeah. And so I guess like those are like a couple of my biggest objections personally. And I know that we're about to keep moving on. So like my personal objections then to the thing that is the linchpin for you. And that's why I like talking this way, because I want to identify where exactly is our difference.
Yeah.
It's that we don't ever see resurrections happen.
Right.
So like in what way is a historian writing about it at the time so there were early Christians right after the death of Jesus. You know, in my view, how do we know that the early Christians weren't already convinced that Jesus rose from the dead, and then they were able to convince others? I'm totally down to believe that they were true believing Christians at the time. And then the fact that there's no eyewitnesses of him walking out of the tomb, the way that the things that we know about psychology, people can misremember things. They can perceive something wrong, they can remember it wrong, and they can tell it wrong. All of those things to me, you know, so if I had to be in Shark Tank, it's like for those reasons, I'm out when it comes to.
What about do you at least take any stock into the woman that seen the angel, Mary Magdalene? Now she's seen Jesus right after. Now, yeah, I mean, I guess what I would ask is the reason you don't believe is because they didn't watch him walk out of the tomb? Because they did see him after, they just didn't watch him roll the stone away. But the woman did see the angels, said about Jesus. Then the apostles seen Jesus before they even skipped out of town. And then not to mention that they all completely changed their lives. And you even said Paul's your favorite. Now, what would be the reason that Paul, being a Christian killer, would all of a sudden out of nowhere be the greatest Christian representer in the history of time? What would make a killer of Christians all of a sudden be the greatest Christian arguably ever in history if he didn't have some kind of life-changing experience? So it's just all of those things together. It's hard for me to just wash all of those away. And then especially the fact that the calendar was changed. They were written about Jesus. I mean, Jesus is not even arguably, he's easily the number one biggest name in the history of time. I don't think there's ever a name that's bigger than Jesus. Well, and I think there's a good reason for that.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that we were able to kind of like identify where our disagreements are specifically. And I wish we could talk forever, but down below me, I've got Murder Shed Steve. What's up?
What's up, everybody?
Talk to you soon, Veggie.
All right. Yeah, I'll see.
Nice.
What's up, Steve?
Not a whole lot, man. I barely could recognize you. Is that who I think? I couldn't recognize who you were without those stunner shades on.
Oh, well, you got to do it when it's sunny out, man.
I suppose. So I have been, I've seen your TikTok here and there, this and that, seen a few of your arguments and all that kind of stuff. And there's a couple of things that I just kind of want some clarification on more than anything. Okay. One thing that I kind of came across, which actually I think is your latest TikTok, as far as I can tell, is God evil argument, right? And I think in the thing you said that's your favorite argument.
Yeah.
So, so I can see, from a non-biased perspective, reading the Bible, I can kind of see that side of the argument, but I was just kind of curious about where you stand on that and kind of what your definitions of evil are as well.
You mean where do I stand on God being evil?
Yeah, or obviously I saw the TikTok, but I suppose right off the bat, like, what's your definition of evil?
Basically a lack of righteousness. It's whenever doing wrong now for me, it's doing wrong according to God's standard. Now in a normal, I guess, human society, it's doing wrong according to human standard. Either way, it's involving morality. It's doing the wrong thing to people, I mean, I guess, and so it comes in different ways, shapes, and forms. I mean, cheating at a board game is nowhere near as relevant as murder or rape, but it's still it's not right to cheat at sorry. Or I've done it. So no, but
now what's wrong with murder though? I mean, come on.
Yeah, exactly. But But no, so I guess my now where I think it comes from, where I think the evil comes from, and now this is why I made that TikTok, is that a lot of people assume, because if you read the Old Testament, there's a lot of dark stuff in there. And a lot of people will say that if evil exists, then God, if he created everything, then God created evil, therefore therefore God's the fault. He's the responsible one. And it's like, the reason why I brought that up, or I made that TikTok, is because I think a lot of people get it confused when they read a lot of the harsh stuff in the Bible. They're assuming that God is like a dictator and that he's just mean and he does evil things. And if you go to hell, or like if he creates you knowing ahead of time that you're going to go to hell, then he's evil for creating you, knowing that you're going to, what they like to say is be tortured, but it doesn't, the Bible doesn't say this, it's torment. And there's a huge difference between this. A lot of people don't know this, but torture is inflicted on the outside. It's somebody else does it to you. Torment is what you intentionally or internally go through. And so when like a bad breakup, if you think that you're the reason, or it's your fault, you can torment yourself by constantly beating yourself up and saying like, man, if I would have done this, if I would have done that, it's all my fault. I did. That's torment. You're putting yourself through that. And I'm not saying that that's all hell is. All I'm saying is when God talks about hell, it's a quarantine of evil. It's a quarantine of people who did not obey his law. And the biggest reason that it's important to treat everyone equally in God's eyes, and he says this many times throughout the Bible, the theme is very constant. It's if you think about God as a dad, I mean, he calls himself the father. If you think of him like your dad, now, I don't know if you have siblings or not, but if you have any, if you have any siblings, you'll know that your parents don't want you to harm your sibling. They care about your sibling as much as they care about you. And so if you look at all human beings, like we are all siblings, we are all his children, which is what he says many times, then he doesn't want you to murder somebody else because you're essentially murdering your brother or sister. He doesn't want you to cheat them or lie to them or rape them or harm them in some way. It's because he, as a dad, he doesn't want his children hurting each other. So it makes sense. Oh, but go ahead. Sorry.
So is hell just full of people just kicking themselves or something, and that's what hell is?
You could say that. I mean, I'm sure there's more going on, but to be honest with you, the Bible doesn't give a whole lot of detail.
Ah, shucks! What an idiot!
I mean, I can tell you this much: if I'm right about hell, if I am right, then there is going to be a lot of people regretting what they've done in this life and all that. So, sure. I mean, you could say kicking themselves, but I mean, I would never claim that I know exactly what each square inch of hell looks like or what it's going to be like. I don't know if you're going to be burning in fire for billions and trillions of years. I don't know, but I know you're going to be tormented in the sense that you are going to experience deep regret. If it's true, you're going to experience deep regret about not trying to at least have a relationship with him sooner.
Well, I've already lived that way for about 33 years, so I think I can manage.
It's not too late, buddy. It's not too late, man.
So earlier on that, you mentioned that evil is essentially breaking God's moral code, right? Mm-hmm. So, and you know, if we're going to go with God's moral code, is that like the 10 Commandments or the 600 some commandments?
Not exactly. Okay. I'm glad you actually brought that up because I've been thinking a lot about that as far as doing a TikTok to kind of explain this. See, because that is the assumption. A lot of people do think that when you talk about morality, you're talking about God's 10 Commandments, and it's not. I mean, it is. That's important. That is very important. Otherwise, he wouldn't have wrote them. But the moral code is actually different than that. Like, for instance, there's nothing on there about pedophilia, but there is in the 10 Commandments something about love thy neighbor as you would love yourself. Basically saying, don't do wrong to them. That one commandment alone summarizes morality as a whole. Don't do
as long as you know all the details of morality, right?
Well, I mean, but this is the thing: is everybody knows right and wrong. They just choose whether or not they're going to obey it. So, for instance, like Hitler knows it was wrong to murder Jews. I don't think there was a second that passed where he was like, I don't think there's really a problem with it. I think it's a good thing. Like nobody's celebrating it. And so, like, even if because I've heard this a lot from certain atheists too, where they say, well, that's not true. Some ancient cultures are cannibalism and some do that. That doesn't mean that they don't know that it's wrong. That doesn't mean that screwing over your friend We know that it's wrong to do it now, but people don't care. Some people will choose to do it anyway. So I don't think for a second, or unless you have some kind of a mental disorder. Now that's a totally different ballgame. You can't, anybody with a mental disorder, obviously you have to throw all this stuff out the window because they're on a different wavelength as a whole. But when you talk about a human being, just a run-of-the-mill human being, we know that it's wrong to go up and punch somebody in the face for no reason. You don't have to be taught that. Now, when you're a little kid, you don't know morality. You think it's totally fine to run up and punch somebody in the face. But at a certain point, you get to, when your brain develops enough, you realize like, man, maybe I shouldn't cheat this person out of winning because that I wouldn't want them to do it to me. And so the golden rule does apply, but I think the golden rule goes deeper than just calling it a golden rule. I think it goes deeper. We are ingrained with it.
So,
and
so
even says that in the Bible. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but it says
that's okay.
Paul talked about that.
Yeah.
He said that God wrote it on our hearts, meaning
right.
we just know it. So hopefully that answers the question.
So I guess that gets a little bit complicated when God asks you to do something against his rule, like the Crusades.
Well, he didn't have to see, and I'm glad you brought that up. That's beautiful, because the Crusades, the fact that people fail with the message that God said does not mean that God is the problem, or God. The Bible did not tell those Crusaders to do what they were doing. And besides that, it's not, when you say, like, for instance, where it says, thou shalt not kill. Now, does that mean if somebody's about to harm your family, you shouldn't kill them? No. If they're about to kill you, should you not defend yourself? Of course you should. And
is that like the fine print part on the heart?
No, I mean, he goes through various detail throughout the Bible, like to protect yourself, protect your family. But you have to understand that when he's saying thou shalt not kill, we all know he means don't go up and just kill somebody for fun. But if somebody's about to take your life or your family member's life, I mean, God sent people on missions to kill evil. He never sent missions for people to go kill innocent people. He sent people to go kill evil. And so that was to stop the evil from them. It's the same for, you live in America, so you understand this principle. We send people overseas, we send troops overseas to stop the evil there, so that way they don't come here and do it here. And so this is the same principle. Now the Crusaders, I'm not going to try to make excuses for them. They went and they killed, but they were killing people that were essentially trying to invade and kill and rape and pillage and do those types of things. So when you talk about the Crusaders, you're talking about guys that, even if they were killing innocent people, they weren't instructed by God to do it. The Bible didn't tell them to go kill innocent people. If they did kill innocent people, which those guys didn't, but even if they did, you're blaming good people, or you're blaming bad people misinterpreting the Bible, if you will. But the Bible doesn't say to do that. So any person that reads the Bible can see that it does not ever say to go kill innocent people. Now, if somebody does and they claim that it's God, that's just not true, because the Bible doesn't say to do that. So you can misinterpret things and then take it upon your own self to do things in God's name, but that doesn't mean that God or the Bible has instructed you to do so.
So then would you say that anybody who did anything that wasn't directly explicit or explicitly written out in the Bible, like something like the Manifest Destiny thing, right? Where there was a mass movement to America, and it was kind of their job to clean everything up and take over the land, and it was a gift to them from God. That's the whole idea of Manifest Destiny. So were they just delusional people that thought that God was telling them something, or is it one of those things where you can only get that information directly from the Bible?
Well, in that scenario, I would say neither. And the reason why I would say neither is because the Bible did not tell anybody from Europe to come over to America and wipe out the Native Americans and take their land. They did that, but the Bible does not say to do that ever. And so,
but they said that they did claim that God told them to do it. Yeah,
they claim that.
Right.
But that doesn't, but the Bible didn't. And I mean, and here, I guess, is my point. If I were to tell you that, I have to steal your car because God told me, you'd be like, no. And a logical person.
I definitely would be like, no.
Well, right. But even if you're a Christian and atheist, it doesn't matter, dude. Like, I mean, if I just say that God tells me something, nobody on earth is going to believe it. It doesn't matter who it. I could be talking to a Christian, and maybe a Christian might be like, "Oh, really? Maybe he did." I don't buy it. Like, I mean, maybe he did say something to you, but the point is, you better be able to at least show or prove. If you're going to say that God told you to do something, and then you're going to go do something extraordinary, and break the laws, if you will, even regular laws, let alone his. If you're going to do something extraordinary, you better have like something to show somebody to be like, hey, listen, God told me to do this. It says it right here in the Bible that I have to do it. As a matter of fact, there's a story in the Bible where
some extraordinary evidence or something.
Well, yeah, I mean,
to kind of back up your claim
that God said it to you,
right?
Then that's internal. Like there's something internal inside your head. But like I said, man, I mean, that's not a real excuse. It doesn't say that in the Bible. So like I said, I try to hold that to a very high standard, because I think if God is real, and if he did write this Bible to us to give us kind of this history book that is also instructional and moral and all these things, then I don't know how you could justify God telling you to do this without actually showing where it said to do that.
Sure. And what if, so, you were kind of talking about the Old Testament a little bit. So what happens when is God bound to his own moral code?
God's not bound to anything. He's God. I mean, if like, for instance, think of it like this. If God made the moral code, he doesn't have to, why would he have to follow it? It's his rule. Like, it'd be like if you, like at your house, if you said, hey man, I have this firm rule that you have to take your shoes off. Well, I would do that for you out of respect for you, but that's not a real law. Like, it's not a real, I'm not going to go to jail for it. I'm not going to burn in hell for it. So
yeah, you're not going to get drowned for it.
Rule. But at the same time, you could wear shoes in your house, right? I mean, even if you told everyone that walks into your house that you can't wear shoes in this house, okay, I'll follow that rule, but you don't have to. It's your house. You made that rule. You can break it whenever you want.
So would you kind of apply the same thought process to governments as well, or any kind of authority?
No, because they're all people.
Okay.
If God is real, then he has sovereign over everything. And so people are not above. Now, I would say if you're talking about laws, like if government, if you have somebody in like a king or a president in charge of a country, and there are if there are lawmakers to keep order, then yeah, of course you have to obey the law of the people that make the laws. And so my point is, God is above the law because he created the law. Now, if you're talking about human beings, we are supposed to be treating each other equally. Now, even people in the government, let's be honest, they get away with stuff that they shouldn't be. Now, I don't like.
Wait a minute.
What do you mean? What?
I was going to say, according to God's law, though, we are not equal. There's God's chosen people. It says in the Bible that God has chosen people. He prefers certain people over other people.
That's not what he means by chosen people. What he means, that's where the heart of his people was the Jewish people. But you have to remember, when Jesus came here, the whole idea was to, first off, even since the beginning, he has been talking about all man was created in his image. He consistently says in different chapters throughout the Bible, Old Testament and New, about the servant is just as great as the master. So it doesn't say that he favored. Now, I know what you mean when you're talking about God's chosen people. He does have a chosen people that are in a certain land. They are going to receive favor, because if you think about Israel, it's surrounded by nothing but people that want to kill them.
And if they're slaves, slaves, they're supposed to be treated better and all that kind of stuff.
But that was Old Testament law to a specific region, to a specific people. Like when you're talking about the slavery in the Bible. Yeah. First off, I know I've heard so many people say that God supports slavery. He does not support slavery. You can read throughout the Bible. If you take one verse, then yes, he supports slavery. But if you read context, and if you read before and after, you'll see consistently throughout the Bible, all people were supposed to be equal. However, people are the ones that choose to screw each other over, enslave people, capture them, kill them, rape them, do all these things. It's people that do that. God has never once instructed somebody to go rape somebody because they're better than them or anything like that. It's more he has his chosen people that are in a certain land that are going to receive favor. As a matter of fact, if you look on a global map right now at Israel, you'll see Israel is surrounded by desert, and Israel is as green as my lawn.
Sure.
Israel's very favored, it looks like, but this is just.
I think there might be a river that goes through it.
I don't think that was an accident either.
Well, I would definitely say that usually when rivers run through things, they look pretty green. So
yes, it does.
that could kind of go on either side, but
yeah,
that you kind of led into another thing that I was kind of interested in on your position about free will.
Yeah.
So obviously you believe that God gave us free will. I think I heard you say that, and that also God knows what choices you're going to make.
Yes.
Before you make them.
Yes.
So that was a little confusing to me.
Okay.
You know, like it almost doesn't feel like free will if God created you the way he created you, knew what decisions you were going to make, and then, you know, you subsequently make those decisions. However, you know, it almost feels predetermined if he already knows. Do you understand where I'm kind of like in circles there?
Yeah. I think I can.
Personally. Yeah. If you wouldn't mind clearing that up for me, that'd be fantastic.
Well, like first and foremost, did you freely choose to ask that question?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think that there is. I think that I was kind of predetermined to ask that question based on information that I've received throughout my life.
Well, if you're predetermined, then how can you trust any of your own thoughts?
I guess I don't fully understand the question. I can trust that I'm having them.
Let me explain like free will as far as how God can do this, or like how we can have free will without things. Because I know what you mean. Like as far as predetermined, I will say this. The grand scheme of his plan is predetermined in the sense that he sees the beginning from the end. He sees the whole outcome. He knows what's going to happen. So in that element, I can understand why people would say, well, then it looks like I don't have choices. But you do have choices. The difference is it's not that God is forcing you to do these things. What it is that it's like this. If you jumped into a time machine right now and you went to 20 years from now and say you have a kid and that kid's getting married. All right. You see who your kid is going to marry, but did your kid not have free will to choose who they were marrying? Were they predetermined? Did they have to do that? And the answer is no, of course, because even if you don't believe in God, if you believe that without a God that you can go into the future and see the outcome, does that mean that they didn't have a choice to make that? They didn't choose their bride or their groom? Of course they did. So you're choosing right now to have me on this show. You're choosing to ask me these questions. So you do clearly have free will. Now the question is, how does God know, or how can God see the future and you still have choice? And it's like this. God is not. It's not that God, it's like you don't, it's not that you have to do what you're doing. It's that God sees what you're going to do. And so people are like, well, then that means I can't choose, or that I can't change that outcome. And you're right, because God sees what is going to take place. So it's not that you can't change your outcome. It's that you don't have an outcome yet. You haven't gotten to that point yet. So like, for instance, a half hour from now, you're going to do something. Something's going to happen. Well, God already sees what's going to happen.
I know what's going to happen.
Well,
I'm going to relieve a little stress.
I like your style. Well, it's like God knows what you're going to choose to do because he's already seen it, because he's outside of time. But it doesn't mean that you don't have that choice. It's just that he watched you do it. He knows what choice you're going to make. So it's not that you can't change that choice. You can do whatever you want to do, and you're going to. But God already knows what you're going to do because he's already seen it. He's already seen your death. He's already seen your grandchildren's death. He's already seen all of it. And so it's not that you have no options and you have no choice to make. It's that he's already been there to see what choice you are going to make. It's just like if you traveled to the future and you've seen me on my deathbed and you know exactly what day and year. Well, that doesn't mean that I'm not making choices freely right now as we speak. It just means that you just happen to see what choices I made.
So I've got, I guess, one more question real quick before we get to Jeff or Pasta. Sorry. Never mind. I got one.
You can.
Yeah,
you can ask it.
Hey, and it's the same vein.
Hey, you can ask it. You can ask it. Hold on. Just before we bring on Jeff and you ask your last question, Adam, thank you, man. Hey, we're going to do like a little interlude right here. Adam, you're a beast, man. Thank you for going through all these tough questions and destroying my atheist panel, by the way. You're giving them a beat down.
I wouldn't say that, man. No, you guys are good because you guys are very thoughtful in the way you ask the questions, and you're very like I'm like I said, I don't expect to change anyone's mind, but the fact that you're as accepting as you are and you're letting me speak and get it out, I appreciate it, guys.
That's good to hear, man. Where would you like me to mail that check?
Yeah. I'll be plugging TART after this, right away.
Oh man, I really appreciate it. I also wanted to shout out some folks in the chat. So we got Mr. Chris Ullery, we got Connor never mind Connor Prosser. We got Kobe and Loki's
Connor,
in the chat.
I know Connor. I like Connor, but yeah, go ahead, guys.
You like Connor? Oh, you just lost.
Well, I mean, I've only had limited conversations with him, but he seems like a good guy too. Like,
no, he's a great guy.
Oh, okay.
He's actually my stepson. Yeah, he's a cool guy, man. Connor. Yeah, he's grounded right now. He ate all the fish sticks, man. Yeah. So,
Connor, if you're watching,
no Minecraft for Connor tonight. So, yeah, we got Silent Souls in the house. God of all hangovers, Loki's in the house.
Shout out, dude. What's up, man?
Geo Sam in the house, man. Anyway, we've got too many folks. Grumpy old cuss. Mind your manners in the chat, because that guy will put you on silent, put you on mute. We got the Oz in there creeping. Oz is a creeper, man. Keep your eye on Oz. He's in the chat group. Now, before we bring out Jeff's going to chat with you here in a minute. Murdershed Steve, you got one more question for the gentleman?
Yeah. So on the free will topic, right? And you were talking about time travel. And you know, if you don't have an answer for this one, it's okay. But do you feel like if you went back in time, right, and you went back to a moment, and everything was exactly the same as it would be if you went back in time, right? The weather's the same, the wind's the same. You know, let's say it's raining, and you make a decision. Do you think that you could go back in time, rewind it literally, and go back into your same mindset and all that kind of stuff, and change your decision on anything? Like, let's say
as my current self, or are you talking about change my past self as a kid or something?
Like if you rewound time literally and went back into the exact same mind frame that you were in the moment when something happened, do you think that you could change your decision in that moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think every time I don't know if I'm getting the question right, so let me answer and then you tell me if I'm wrong. But
sure.
I think, well, if I'm hearing it correctly, what I think is that every decision that you have, every minute, I mean, every second, you have decisions to make. Do I talk now? Do I not? Do I turn my head? Do I not? You know, I mean, you're constantly making decisions, whether you're even aware of it or not. And if you're asking, do you
or you feel like you are?
Yeah, well, if you care, or do you want to make a different decision? Yeah, I mean, I've been at moments where, like, you know, I was presented with an option to either do something that I knew was not exactly good or not, and I wrestled back and forth with whether or not I should do it, and then you ultimately make a decision. Now, to ask if it's possible for me to make a different decision, well, yeah, I mean, I almost did, but I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't know how you would even be able to prove like how to change the decision. So I mean, but I don't think that means I was predetermined to pick what I did. If that's where you're kind of going with it.
Yeah, it kind of is. You know, that's definitely one of those questions that I had to chew on for a very long time. And after I thought about it and all that, that's kind of where I came to the position I have now, which is a little bit more of a naturalist predeterminist.
Yeah, but the only problem I have,
it's still something that I'm, you know, considering.
Yeah, but here's the thing and that's good. It's honest. That's very honest to admit that. And the thing about it is, if you're just a natural, let's say, meat machine, you're just basically a moist robot, then
a very good looking one, by the way.
If you're just natural causes and you're just predetermined, then why would you trust anything that you think? Why would you even trust atheism?
Look, we're just bags of meat on a rock floating through floating through the universe. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
And basically, I trust that I've had experiences that led me to where I am now, and those experiences guided me in a way that was beneficial to my survival.
What about?
So it may be a good idea to continue.
See, and this is the problem. I'm glad you actually brought that up, because I don't talk about this very much. But when you're a baby, you still make decisions. You don't remember them. None of us remember it, but you definitely made them.
Sure.
I mean, you don't laugh. I mean, well, you laugh at certain things, but you might, like when you're a baby, for instance, somebody puts out a toy in front of you. Like I got a 1.5-year-old. You put out 78 toys in front of her. She's going to go after one of them. She makes choices. Now she's never going to remember this in 10, 15 years. But the idea, what I'm getting at, I guess, is that to think that you're pre-wired or predetermined to make certain choices, I would have to say, well, how could you do that as a baby? How could certain when you're a baby, you don't even know certain things. So how could you be predetermined to make certain choices without your own knowledge, even as a baby, when you don't even have those experiences to back up your, like you said, you feel like you have experiences that kind of led you to make these decisions and make these thoughts and these choices now. Well, that's not true for a baby. They haven't had enough experiences to do that.
Well,
I
guess we would just have to put more study into what experiences within the womb affect, the rest of your childhood. But I think it's time to move on.
Right on.
So, Adam, I really appreciate you answering my questions and having a nice little discussion with me. I'd love to chat with you more later.
Yeah, me too, dude. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
definitely.
So it's time for Q&A with Murder Chef Steve.
There's no Q&A. We're not doing Q&A. I'm not Q&A.
I was going to say, I'm down for Q&A. I like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess. Let's take a little breather break.
Okay.
And we're going to slow it down a little bit. And I kind of want to recap some of the things you said. So one of the things was the Bible contains no errors.
I said that there's nothing in there that you can prove to be false.
Okay. So nothing in the Bible. So nothing in the Bible that could be proved to be false.
Right.
And then, and so do you think that adds legitimacy to the Bible that there isn't a false statement in there, or a statement that can't be proven false?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, that's a big thing for me, is the fact that so many different authors at so many different time periods wrote so many different ways, and yet all combined after 1,500 years. I mean, think about this. The fact that anybody from more than 200 years ago could write anything that is historically and scientifically backed up by not some facts, some logic, some truth, but zero falsities is very impressive just on its own.
Sure.
I mean, whether you believe the book or not, it's very impressive that somebody 1,500 years ago, all the way up to say 2,000 or 1,500 years span of time between the beginning and the end. The fact that it was over 2,000 years, or like around 2,000 years ago that it was written, and to think that science has made all these discoveries and all these things, and yet nothing can be proven false. But yet there are several things in the Bible that were mentioned long before the world believed them. And then science slowly figured them out, like the fact that the earth is round, the fact that there's water inside the earth under the ocean floor, the fact that it can crack open and spring forth water. We've actually seen with robots. I don't know if you've ever seen that show, Planet Earth. But I remember one of my favorite episodes. There was they had one of those deep sea submarine robot things that went all the way down, and they were studying like the trenches and the water, like the bubbles and the things coming up out of the cracks. And so, and then on top of that, to think about Noah's flood. Now, a lot of atheists do not believe that there was a global flood. And
sure.
I understand, I totally understand that. We don't have a ton of evidence, but there is overwhelming, I would call it evidence, but there's overwhelming, but it ties into science, logic, and what we see on Earth. So there's just so many things about the Bible that explain why we see what we do and how things could be what they are.
Sure.
So yeah.
And so you think then that the fact that the Bible doesn't have scientific errors and such, that's evidence then that the God, who's the creator of the universe, the Christian God, knows these things and gave this information to early humans in order to educate them or put it in the book as evidence that, obviously a creator can write a user manual. You know what I mean? Like if you create the item, you should be able to. So, and I don't want to get too deep into that because I got some other stuff I want to get into as well. Okay. But why do you think then, like, if you look at early Christians or people of that time, as you know, the earth is circular is what in Genesis. So why then were early people not aware that the world was a sphere, even though they were given the Bible?
Well, they were. I mean, if you look into Isaiah, Isaiah was in the Old Testament. Isaiah was written a very long time ago. It was one of the earlier books. Isaiah in chapter 40, verse 22 says,
No. I mean, people that lived back then, they were practicing Christians, and what the church taught was not that there was
in the Old Testament, there were no Christians. So are you talking
Sure.
about then, or are you talking about after Jesus?
We're talking we'll say human beings at that time frame, and churches at that time frame, not necessarily Christian churches, because obviously they didn't exist yet.
Right.
But we'll say Jews then believed that the earth was flat. And this was common knowledge from people of that age, even though they had access to these writings. So and even early Christians and early Christian churches preached that the earth was flat, and that was doctrine. So why?
Well, there's people that misinterpret things, but
Sure.
I don't know.
I mean, it was a wide held belief by early humans, even though they had that information.
But not people that studied the scripture. People that studied the scripture, at least when Isaiah was out, it was
well, even up to 200 years after Jesus's death, people were still.
Well, there's still people today saying that the earth is flat.
But I mean, it was taught by church. You know, it was church doctrine at the time.
Exactly, and it was also taught that the sun revolved around us.
Yeah, so
but
they were wrong.
Does not say that.
But they were wrong.
That's my point. Is just because people taught it doesn't mean that that's what the Bible said.
Sure. Then how do you know what you're being taught today is correct?
In science or in the Bible?
Just in what you've been told that the Bible says. How do you know that's correct?
Well, how do you know anything's correct? I mean,
that's a good question.
So all we can really do is just see how this is, and I'm glad you actually said that, because this is why I brought up logic early into this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Because logic has been a very important thing. Logic and wisdom as a whole has been a very important thing to me since.
But don't you think those are very individieither? Like your logic makes it true. That's not necessarily the truth.
No, my
so
logic,
if we can't,
my logic, there's only logic. You either use it or
but that's a human thing. That's a human ability, right? And humans are susceptible to a lot of things.
Human.
Yeah, but humans are susceptible to a lot of things, like a lot of false things. But let's move on from that. So you mentioned Josephus as one of the reasons that you believe in the resurrection story.
A very minor one, but
yeah.
He just adds on to it. But
Sure, but you think that his testimony from what he heard is compelling?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So like what his writings would be a piece of that puzzle that you would put together for the larger picture. Yeah. So my question is really, why didn't Josephus convert? If he was there and he was given these firsthand, why didn't he find it compelling enough to convert to Christianity?
It's the same reason a lot of people didn't while they were watching Jesus perform miracles, while they watched him get crucified, while they watched him rise up. There were many Jews that actually switched to Christianity. And they already, if you think about it, they already had the creator. They already had God. So to think that they already had their God and they chose to go away from that belief and to focus God as Jesus, I mean, it's the same God. Jesus is a part of that. It's part of the Trinity. And like, it's a lot of people have a lot of confusion with the Trinity. I think I have a good way of explaining that to make sense, but Jesus is part of the Trinity. And so Jews chose, some of them chose to then follow Jesus as God. Not that it wiped away the old God or a different God. It was the same God, but they understood, a lot of them converted to become Christian because of the fact that they saw Jesus do these things. They did believe that he rose from the dead. I mean, think about why Christianity even boomed at all. Why did it even start at all? It's because a lot of people really believed that this man named Jesus was the Christ, was the one who resurrected. He was the sacrifice. Otherwise, you wouldn't hear about Christianity to this day. The fact that it boomed from that specific region outward, huge and massively, and people wrote about it. I mean, we're still talking about it 2,000 years later. And think about our calendar. The year is 2020. It's 2020 years after what?
When did the Georgian calendar? When do you think that we started using that?
That was like 500 or 600 years after Jesus' death.
This is 1,500 years. It's like 500 years old.
He was talking about it in the 500s. That's when he lived.
1534, 1539, something like that.
I'm pretty sure he was 500 something.
The Georgian calendar would have been 1582.
Well, no, the guy that created the calendar, the guy, King Gregory, he was the one that's where the Gregorian calendar comes from. I believe it was like late 500s is when he created this.
From the
But
Pope?
regardless, even if we just started using it this year, the point is there's a very good reason why 2,000 years later,
Yeah, because
Jesus' name is still relevant around the entire world.
I mean, there are other names that are relevant. There are other religions who have names that are relevant. I don't know how that adds validity to the argument.
Well, did those other people claim to be God and then resurrect? Because that's a big deal for me. I mean,
I'm still not sold on the resurrection here. You're sold on it.
Yeah.
I have seen no evidence to support that at all.
Well,
like the resurrection.
What about those people that completely changed what they believed and who they were? Like Paul. Paul's a good one. Paul was killing Christians. That was his job.
What about people like there are plenty of people that have mass suicides bigger than that, more than 500 over belief systems that they have. Are you telling me that they're true?
Cult.
Okay.
But you got to understand, but this is the big deal though, is that the disciples are the ones who supposedly made this story up. They're the ones that were willing to die for this.
I'm not saying that they didn't see it. But how do I know that what they saw was true? People see things and hallucinate all the time. How am I supposed to trust the testimony?
They see Paul at different times. Paul's seen him at a totally different time than the disciples did.
How do you know
Mary's
that?
Seen him at a different time. The 500 seen him.
How do you know that?
In a different place.
But how do you know that?
Because this was written all over the world at the time. Well, in that region, it was written in different places, seen by different people in different areas. It wasn't like everyone seen Jesus in one spot.
But we don't have those original gospels that you're claiming. We don't have those stories, and they're unauthored. We don't know that.
We have them within 15 years after.
No, we don't. There's not.
Yeah.
What you can do is use some hermeneutics and some other things to get there, but we don't have copies. The copies are in Greek. We don't have the originals.
But look up what Paul was talking about in 49 AD.
What about it?
In Corinth. Paul was dating in Corinth. It's in Corinth history. It's not Bible history. It's in real history that Paul was in Corinth.
I'm not saying he didn't exist.
Right. So my point is he was a Christian killer. He then, for whatever reason, totally converted and became one of the greatest Christians on the face of the planet.
Well, that whatever reason might be the whatever reason. Let's say he did see Jesus or thought he saw Jesus, right? We know that an individual, because you would not accept a story from an individual person that said they saw something.
Right.
But you, without question, take this gentleman who you can't talk to, can't see, don't have the original writings of at all. You don't have the original authorship, and you're saying that his story is valid. And all I'm saying is, for that claim, well, you just pointed out his story as being one of the best.
I'm pointing out many stories.
Sure.
But you're only focusing on that one. I'm pointing out the fact that Mary claimed to see him. She went and told other people.
Okay. So let's stop there. So Mary saw, she went and told other people. How do we know that? Other than it being written down in a book.
Written down.
It wasn't
just written down in the Bible, dude. This was written all over.
Where else was it written?
Think about this.
Where else was it written other than the Bible?
By Josephus, Tacitus.
Josephus didn't write it. He wrote what he heard.
It was obviously written in that time period with those people, because why else would all of these people start converting? Just because one woman claimed to see something?
Why would so many people convert to Islam?
Because they believe that.
Islam is the fastest growing religion right now.
Sure.
Why is that?
Because a lot of people want to believe that story.
Okay, so couldn't Christianity then have grown because a lot of people wanted to believe that story?
Yeah, but you're forgetting that you have so many other people that are also seeing things in different regions. It's
like all the hadiths. There's plenty of hadiths that saw the same things as Muhammad.
Assuming that one woman seen one thing and then went and told a few people, and then those people told everyone else. That's not what happened.
Well, Josephus didn't see it.
Yeah, I didn't see George Washington. Do you believe he existed?
Well, see, with George Washington, he didn't claim to die and come back from the dead. Secondly,
who cares?
Because
why do you believe he existed?
Well, let's say I do have original authorship. You have a lot of different stories from different people. You have the Bible. You have the Bible. And I have original documents from George Washington. You don't have original documents from any of these people.
Paul,
You don't have Paul's original. You have Hebrew. He didn't speak
You
Hebrew.
have-
I mean, he spoke. It was in Greek. They don't speak Greek.
Look in Corinth history. He
Okay.
was there preaching about Jesus.
Sure,
Why would
but-
he do that? See, what I'm saying is you have several people that told several people, other people, these same things. So if you want to believe, then listen, like I said, I'm not trying to convert you. If you don't want to believe, that's fine. But
Sure.
the reality is it obviously boomed for a reason.
Sure.
A lot of people clearly believed it for a very good reason. I don't think there was lots of things that people would just say,
Sure.
and it didn't matter. And especially, here's one big key element of it: in that culture, women's testimony or women's comments meant nothing.
Yeah, I know where you're going with this one. It's
The point that I'm getting at is that the fact that people believed her, even though her testimony means nothing, is very powerful.
I don't
And
know
the
if
fact
people
that these
believed her or not.
disciples- Well, obviously they did, because look at how Christianity boomed.
It was
You're putting
written
it on
after
her.
the fact.
You're trying to say that she went and told people.
No,
and
I'm not
her
saying that she
opinion
went and
doesn't
told
matter,
people
but
or
now you're
anything.
saying that you don't believe, that you don't think they believed her. Well, obviously they believed her because they went on to make this big giant religion known as Christianity.
Sure.
So clearly people believed her.
Sure. So
But
people
it wasn't just her.
But it doesn't. So if I'm from an outsider's perspective and I'm looking at multiple religions, I could say the same validation stuff about Islam and its path
You can
to
say
where it's
that
at today.
who resurrected in Islam?
It doesn't matter if they resurrected or not.
That's a
We
big
haven't
deal.
proven Jesus' resurrection.
Okay, well, I don't care about that. You asked me why I believe. I'm saying because Jesus resurrected.
Well, who else had a prophet that flew to the moon? Only Muslims. Therefore, they're correct.
Well, see, and this is where you're wrong about that, because
But you can't take an individual story out of the
Well, let me
Bible
finish.
and it's unique.
Muhammad claimed to never do miracles. He wasn't even a
Yeah, he
Jew
wasn't a god.
until 150 years later. So he didn't fly to the moon.
We don't know that.
He never claimed to.
Well,
That's the
again,
point.
it was written. It's in a book.
Yeah, there's a lot of things. Harry Potter was
So
written.
anyway, let's move on. Let's move on from that. So, free will, because you were talking with Murder Shed Steve about free will,
Yes.
and I think that's an important piece to talk about.
Mhm.
Do you think that free will can exist without sin?
Why?
Like
Like if
if-
you have free will and you have the free will to choose to sin.
So if sin was removed from the equation, we wouldn't have free will.
You mean if things were considered to be sin?
No, like if God removed us the ability to sin, like remove temptation, remove sin.
We'd be robots. We'd be
Sure.
robots. He wouldn't care. Well, why would he even care about what we do or anything if he just
So
made a
it's-
bunch of robots?
So it's important that we have the ability to sin in order to have free will.
Yeah, I would say to God, it's important to have free will, and with free will allows you to do good things or bad things.
So yeah, because if we didn't have the ability to sin, then we wouldn't have free will.
Yeah.
Can you sin in heaven?
Now with us, after we die, I don't think you'll want to, but can you? Yeah, the angels did. A third of them did, and that's
It's
why
not
they
what-
were banished.
Well, yeah, but they weren't human. Humans don't sin in heaven.
Well, it didn't matter. They had free will, and that's what you're asking.
Yeah,
You're
but
asking about
no,
free
but
will.
talking about humans and sin in heaven, we don't. The Bible clearly states that you will not sin in heaven. You don't have the ability to sin in heaven.
It didn't
So
say you
we don't
the
have
ability.
free will.
It says that you won't.
Yeah, we won't. So
It didn't say that you can't.
well, then we don't have free will.
No, you can. You aren't going to want to.
I don't think it
Think
says
about
can.
it, dude. If you die and go to heaven, and you're with God, and everyone around you is.
Hey, what's up, folks? Hey, just taking a breather. I'm giving Jeff a massage backstage. Hold on, kneading out those muscles. No, Jeff's just taking a break for a second. He's going to come back in. No, Jeff's passionate. Jeff gets a little bit passionate, and
He's fine. I don't like when
no.
you cut me off and I can't talk, but other than that, he's fine.
no, and I actually wanted to give you some kudos because you're handling it like a champ. Jeff is a very passionate guy, and although I kind of agree with some of the folks in the chat because they're saying, hey, I do agree with the theists in the group. There's even some atheists that are saying let Adam talk. So I do agree, but I also feel where Jeff's coming from. But I wanted to step in and say, hey, let's refresh. We're going to bring Austin in with Jeff as well. Austin's got some questions, But man, Adam, you have been a scholar and a gentleman.
Oh,
Two of
thank
those things. They're not mutually exclusive, but you've been both. You've been both of those things tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I'm just working out that knot. Jeff has scoliosis, so I'm really getting into the back.
And really, this is why I come on the show. I mean, to hear about you massaging and getting the knots out and everything. That's why we're here.
I work wonders. I do. I haven't branched over to do Christians yet, but hey, if I ever do, Adam.
Yeah, I'd be honored, dude.
I'll holler. let me get this little troll back in here. Jeffrey, are you going to behave yourself, sir? Jeffrey.
Huh? What?
Are you going to behave yourself? You're like Darth Dawkins over there. Okay, here we go. And look at this guy. Who's this fella? Who is this guy up here?
Woo!
Who is this guy? Hold on. Whenever I bring Austin in, I got to do this little number too.
What up?
Here you go. There you go.
Nice.
Anyway, I'm going to get back. Jeffrey, can we play nice? You know, let me get out of here.
What?
Yeah, you're good, dude, man. Ask away. Just
Oh,
give me
okay.
some time to talk, though. That's all. That's all.
Sure. Where was I? What was I talking about?
Free will.
Oh.
Something about free will.
I'm done with the free will thing. So, I mean, I really only have one other question, and then I'm kind of done.
All right. Yeah, shoot.
Loving God, right? Is there anything you can think that your child could do to you or anybody else that you would send them to punishment and hell for all eternity?
Yeah, try to murder me and my family.
You would send your child.
Well, see, I think I know where you're going with this, and let me explain. Hell is not. It's not a quote unquote punishment for eternity. It is, but you're looking at it in the wrong element. The reason hell is a quarantine of evil. It's a quarantine of people that don't want to be with God. See, if God is reaching out to you every day on earth, trying, maybe not every single day, but if he's reaching out to you, trying to get you to know him and just have a relationship with him, and you reject him for your entire life, he's obviously going to give you up to your own desire. He's not going to force you to be in his presence for all of eternity. So if you don't want to be with him, if you don't want to have a relationship with him, then you're not going to be in heaven with him. And the other option, there's only two places. You're either going to be with him or you're not. And so hell is a quarantine of the evil. We've all done evil. So to think that like only murderers and rapists are going to be there, that's not the case. Everyone who breaks his law is guilty. Just like in our own country, if you break the law, you're guilty. Now there's different levels of punishment, and the same thing goes for hell. It's very clear in the Bible that hell is not just some all-encompassing ball of fire. There's different levels of it, and it even says so when people talk about torture, you're talking about what other people are doing to you or what something else is doing to you. Torment is what you internally go through. And so hell is going to be filled with evil, and it's going to be filled with people that don't want to be with God, obviously, or else they would have at least attempted to be with him at some point in their life. But when they don't, then he says, okay, I love you too much to force you to be in heaven with me for all of eternity. So he lets you go to another place, and that other place is hell.
So you think that like if your children rejected you, that would be okay to send them for eternal punishment?
Once again, you're focusing on the part of punishment. It's not that it's a punishment. It's
okay, go to hell for torment.
Yeah, but what you don't understand is that torment, like I explained earlier, is what you self-inflict what you do to yourself. It's if you beat yourself up over a bad performance, a failure, something that you've done wrong, and it's just weighing on you, and you just can't help but think, man, I should have did this different. I shouldn't have did this. I shouldn't have. Like years ago, I know you know me as the Christian, but years ago, I got a DUI. I was drinking, driving, got wasted, got pulled over. I had to deal with the repercussions of knowing I could have gotten somebody killed. I could have gotten myself killed. That's torment, to deal with that in your own head. Nobody was forcing that on me. Nobody was telling me that you should feel bad. I did feel bad. I felt remorseful. I felt terrible because I could have gotten somebody else killed. And I would have felt immensely more remorseful if I had gotten somebody killed. So thank God I didn't. But the point is, when you're in hell, you're looking at it as a punishment, like you're getting beaten up or you're getting in fire for all of eternity. That is not what the Bible does say. The Bible just says it's going to be eternal torment. So that's internal. Now it's going to be filled with a lot of people who clearly don't want God. If you did, you would find him now, or you would at least attempt to have some kind of a relationship with him now. But if you don't, and you reject him, he gives you the free will to allow you to reject him. And if you don't want to be with him, he says, I'm not going to force you to be in my presence for all of eternity. That's what hell is.
Sure. And then if we have time, I know I already said last thing, but so then how do you, so, you talked about how there's not scientific errors in the Bible, and that's, shows that there's a creator, that he knew about this. So, but what about like the verses that talk about like no rain before Noah's time, or, rain, that rain doesn't, go back, or even the smallest seed being a mustard seed? That's pretty clear in the Bible that the mustard seed is the smallest of all seeds. But that's not true. So how do you
have faith the size of a mustard seed?
The smallest of all seeds, but it's not the smallest of all seeds. That's not true.
Region.
Well, yeah, but this is God's word. Yes.
Yeah, but he's not talking about people in America, or he wasn't talking to them. He was talking to specific people in a specific region.
Sure.
And the only seed that they knew of when he was talking to those specific people was a mustard seed. So
why wouldn't he just say small?
Well, he was saying to what they knew. He was only talking to people about the knowledge that they actually had. So to say a mustard seed was something that they could relate with. He never said, if you had faith the size of a mustard seed, which, by the way, is the smallest seed of all time, there is no smaller seed, then I would say, yeah, you're absolutely right, man. He lied. But
he said the smallest of all seeds.
In the region of the people he was
No, you're adding that extra part on there. That's not what's in there.
You have to add context. You can't just, I said this many times, you can't read one verse and say, okay, well, this is the whole story. You have
so
to.
Who gets to decide what the context is here? You just say the verse clearly states the mustard seed.
You had faith the size of an atom, but they didn't
talk
about atoms.
That would be fantastic.
You're right. But nobody knew what an atom was, so that would be irrelevant to them.
The point is, he could have said, if you had faith the size of a mustard seed, period. No extra, because like you said, they know that the size of the mustard seed is small. But the extra part, the smallest of all seeds, clearly written by men of that time in that era, that's who wrote it. If God had written it, or had God inspired it, there would not be such an error. Just like there wouldn't be an error with Noah's Ark, with the man living to be 900 years old, with rain not returned.
See, this is where I get back into the belief thing. You don't know that people didn't live to be 900. You assume it.
You serious?
You see it today. Yeah, 100%.
You believe people live to be 900 years old?
Absolutely.
And by the way, if you live to be 150 right now, that would be miraculous.
Absolutely. I 100%.
So what do you think it was different back then that allowed the human body, because it's the same, to live to be 900?
Well, one, the flood happened. If you notice, if you follow the lineage, right after the flood happened, all the ages started to die off. So clearly something during that flood had changed everything.
So what do you think it was?
I don't know. The Bible doesn't tell you everything. I wouldn't claim to know what it was that changed. I know.
But you claim to know that people were 900 years old.
Exactly. And if you look up Sumerian text, if you look up old ancient Sumerian text, they also speak of an age where the golden age is what it's called. Look it up on Google it. The golden age. It's well known. It's not just in the Bible. There was an age of people that supposedly lived 1,000.
Supposedly.
Yeah.
Why would you believe that? I mean, there are ancient texts about Hercules.
It's written in more places than just the Bible.
Hercules is written in more places than the Bible. Do you believe Hercules existed and lifted really heavy things? Nope. Why is that?
Because it's a myth and it's known to be a myth. The Bible is not known to be a myth. You may believe it's a myth, but it's not known to be one.
I mean, it sounds like one. People living to be 900.
And
a boat with every...
Didn't I? I fully understand why people don't believe it. I fully understand why you would never believe in a snake that talks. I know why you don't believe in a burning bush that talks. I know you don't believe that Jesus changed water into wine, or that he walked on water. I'm well aware of that. The fact of the matter is if he's God, he can do whatever he wants. So
except iron chariots.
Hard to believe.
You got to watch the iron chariots. God cannot defeat iron chariots.
Why couldn't he?
I don't know. That's what the Bible says.
Once again, you need context, dude.
What's the context? God can do anything.
I don't even know what part you're talking about, to be honest with you. I'd have to read what verse and where you're talking about and read before and after.
It's in Ezekiel.
Okay.
It's about a
What
battle.
did he say before and after that, though?
It was in a battle, and it was God was with them. And when they went to go battle, they could not defeat them, even though God was with them, because they had iron chariots.
And it's not because they had iron chariots.
That's what it says.
I understand. And that's why I said you need context, and you need more than just a birth or a part.
And here's
you're
what's
looking at one thing. See, God says a lot of things throughout the Bible, but if you read just one part of it, then it's going to sound bad. Like if you look in Exodus and you see where he's talking about how to discipline slaves, you'll get the impression that he's rooting for slavery.
But don't you think it's weird? Don't you think it's weird that this God, which I think is a poor communicator, gives us a book that is clearly flawed, or at least enough to where we can argue about it, and then we have to use the excuse of context to understand it? But what if, I give the Bible to a person with no context, okay? I just give them a Bible. They've never read it before. They don't know anything about it. Are they going to come to the same conclusion as someone else that I just give the Bible to, or someone else I just give the Bible to? That's why we have so many denominations with all these different things. I just think God did a poor job of communicating. And here I am trying to find truth, and I'm going to be punished because it can't be determined. It's so many different things. And whenever the Bible says something and it doesn't align with whatever we want to do, we can just claim context, because context has changed throughout history. The context about homosexuality in the Bible is changing right now. And 10 years from now, who knows what Christians will do when it comes to homosexuality, as it's just not progressive, and it's going to kill the religion if they don't accept it. So they change the context. So now, and this is just you and I, like right now, this is like the real thing. Mm-hmm. If we know context changes, how do we know we're right now? How do we know 20 years from now you're not going to have a different interpretation of those verses? And all I'm saying is that if this God can do everything and he can do anything, why would he give us such a poor example that is on par with every other book in the world? On par with every other holy book. And when you look at that regionally, it doesn't matter it matters where you are born and what surrounds you and what you see as to what you believe. So you believe, and I believe, and Oz believes these things based on what's around us. And that's why we fell into Christianity. Whereas if I was born in the Middle East, it's more likely I'd be Muslim. If I was born in Asia or parts of Asia, it's more likely I'd be Hindu. This follows a pattern. And it's not what we would expect to see if the Bible was correct. So I don't understand why God would give us this book and then have every natural answer that we get to not line up. Every time we learn something in science, every time we learn something, it's the opposite of what the Bible has said, which is why it's true. Why would the evidence of people living to be 900 not be there? Why would the evidence it
is if you look for it?
So what's the evidence?
There are other cultures who wrote about it.
And I
don't
told
know
you.
if you think you can assume that they are also making it up, I guess.
But why did you reject Hercules then?
Because it's a known myth.
But people living to be 900
the story
isn't?
Of the Bible is not a known myth, dude. You're hung up on this Hercules thing. I've already explained this. Those other gods have weaknesses. God does not. A god does. The little ones like Zeus and Thor and Hercules, but God, capital G-O-D, does not have weaknesses.
But you believe because it's written down.
Be God, and he wouldn't be worth worshiping. But when we talk about context in the Bible, first off, the Bible doesn't change. So therefore, whatever context is in the Bible, it is what it is. It's up to us to dig deep and search for the answers and to interpret it.
Well, then why do we come to different solutions?
It says, seek and you shall find. Now, if you don't want to seek, you're not going to find. And you're going to make little claims like, well, it's not consistent and it says this and it lies about this. It doesn't. Name one known proven lie. And I know
the mustard seed is the smallest of all seeds.
Because he was talking to a certain region. They didn't know of any smaller seeds.
Okay. It didn't rain before Noah.
He didn't bring up atoms either, did he? He didn't bring up quarks either.
It didn't rain before.
People didn't know what they were. So you have to know context, dude. If
Sure.
he's talking to a specific group of people in a specific region, he's going to relate to those people by what they know. So
Sure.
I understand you're interpreting that one sentence as saying, well, God lied or God said the wrong thing. No, he said what people would understand. And so when you say things like the context is always changing, and all that, no, it's not. The people in that day knew that the smallest seed they've ever come across was a mustard seed. So what did he say to them? He said, if your faith was as large or as the size of a mustard seed,
The smallest of all seeds.
Tell that mountain to jump into the water.
So what did Jesus do after his baptism?
What do you mean?
What happened directly after Jesus' baptism?
Well,
40 days in the desert. The 40 days in the desert, yeah.
Where he got tempted by Satan.
Yeah. Also, what happened 3 days after his baptism? There was a wedding where he turned water into wine.
Oh, yeah.
So how can that happen if he's being tempted in the desert?
These are two different times.
No, 3 days after his baptism and 40 days after his baptism.
What are you getting at? He didn't go at the same time. It's not like he changed water into wine while he was in the desert.
Right. It doesn't make sense.
In the wilderness.
4 days after his baptism, he did the wine. 40 days after his baptism, immediately after his baptism, those two events happened concurrently.
He was tempted after all of this. They didn't happen. They didn't coincide together. He wasn't at some celebration of a wedding while he was in the desert being tempted by Satan.
What about the Judas discrepancy?
What about what discrepancy?
How did he die?
He got beaten, thorns on the head, crucifixion, spear through the side.
No. Judas.
Oh,
not
Judas
Jesus.
hung himself.
Or he didn't fall down and bash himself and rocks and guts come out?
Broke.
Okay.
Yeah, he hung himself from a tree. The branch broke. He fell down. Yeah.
And he was paid for that?
He was what for that?
Paid for his.
He was paid before that.
Okay.
But then he felt bad because he realized that he turned in Jesus. And so he killed himself for it. And Jesus even said, it would have been better for him to not be born at all. So you know what that means? I doubt he's in heaven. I don't think anyone in heaven, I don't think it would have been better for anyone in heaven to be born at all. So to not be born at all. So I can imagine where he's at. And it's probably a pretty rough spot for him personally, because he did one of the most heinous acts you could possibly do to God.
That's cool. I mean, I think I'm with you on that.
Okay.
So, but I do appreciate you letting me beat up on you for a while.
That's fine, man. I'm a pincushion, baby.
Well, I'm just trying to get back at all the other people on me.
Passionate about it. That's fine. I do too, man. But I'm just trying to keep it as respectful as possible.
It is an entertainment show.
It is, dude. And listen, I'm not going to sit here. I mean, if I had notes in front of me, it'd be a different story. But I'm sitting here on my couch to know exactly what stories and what verses and everything you're talking about specifically. I would have.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, please, because trust me, I know what you're talking about, but these are not those two events about the water and the wine and him being in the desert. They are not at the same time. And I'd have to see why, like, what it is that you're reading to
the Bible.
I get it, dude. But I'm saying what exact verses you're reading to make that mistake, to think that he turned water into wine at a wedding while being tempted in the wilderness.
I think there's a lot of like a very large amount of errors in the Bible, a large amount.
Can you name another one?
So in the private chat, because we could literally do this for the next 12 hours.
Yeah, because there's a lot of things that people assume are contradictions, but then when you read more and you cross-reference, you see that they're not actually contradictions. They're just different perspectives and viewpoints.
Yeah, I just don't know how, like, our pathway to determine truth. And you say things like, well, it's true because it was written. So therefore you're determining truth by
that. I never say anything's true just because it's written.
Well, then
just because somebody said something, or just because it makes sense. You need all of those to come together.
But the 900 years old thing, like, what else other than it being written down do you have?
Well, I mean, ancient cultures believed it as well. Like if you're asking me how I can prove it, I can't. So
no, I'm asking you how you know it to be true, how you determined it to be true.
I just believe it to be true because it's written down several places besides just the Bible.
So if something is written down several places besides the Bible, then it is true in your mind.
No, but I believe that many people believe it.
So there has to be another factor involved there that you're not telling me.
Well, here's the biggest factor is that I don't see anything in the Bible that's proven to be false. So since the Bible wrote it down, I also believe that too. You understand?
But that's circular logic. It has to be true because it's in the Bible, and Bible doesn't make sense.
No, everything that I've read in the Bible is either true or it's believed to be true and could be false, but there is no proving of anything being false. You don't believe that people live to be 900.
So we need to prove to you that people didn't live to be 900.
All right. Hey guys, I'm jumping in because we're at an hour and 44.
Okay, so time's flying by, dude.
So I don't want to go too much longer, and I did want to be able to ask a question too here. Yeah, and Adam, you've been great, and we'll get you back on for sure, because that a lot of these conversations go on.
I'll try to be better prepared on the water and wine thing next time.
Wine. Well, if it has alcohol, we're good. We'd like to talk about that. But no. So far, Adam, you've been a rock star, man. Thank you for coming on and having these conversations with us. And before, I just have like 3 or 4 questions that I want to ask. But before we do that, I know kind of the area you're from. And I'm not going to dox you, so I'm not going to say it unless you want to say it. But I'm going to assume you have a favorite baseball team up there.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I'm gonna assume you have a favorite.
All right, and then
I was thinking that was is that a birdhouse?
It's so I'm in Indiana, but I am a lifelong Baltimore Orioles.
It's hard to tell from here whether it's that or if it's the birdhouse, the bird on the for the skateboarding. But sorry, go ahead. Didn't mean to go.
Okay. Nope. No, you're good. You're good. Yeah. So Cal Ripken was my guy growing up. So that's where that comes from. But now that we know you're from the D, is it true that all the white guys there think you're Eminem?
No. But I will say there is way too many white rappers in this area. You know, once Eminem and 8 Mile came out, every white guy was rapping. So no.
But Adam. Were you or are you one of them?
No, was I? No, I mean, no, I've never really. I like rap. I definitely like rap, and I love Eminem and all that stuff. But no, I never claimed to be from 8 Mile. You know.
All right, so you're not going to come on the round table one night and start dropping bars?
No, probably not. Not good ones, at least.
All right. So like I said, we're at hour actually almost an hour 50. So I'll try to move these as quickly as possible. Just for everybody involved, viewers and even you as a guest, be respectful. So first of all, we know Adam that you're a Christian. You've already shared that. If I could ask real quick, how long have you been a believer in Christ?
I mean, I was in church when I was little, so I mean, I guess kind of most of my life, as far as I can remember back, I at least had questions and thought about it. Like I always thought that there was something bigger, and I went to church, so I mean, it kind of made sense back then. But I'd be lying if I said I was fully bought in just because I was a kid going to church. You know, a lot of it I thought was boring, and I didn't like it. And so for a while, and then we had a really good pastor that ended up dying, and so for a lot of I'd say from around the age of 10 to about 15, 16, me and my dad would just read the Bible, and I would have questions, and I would make my dad give me answers. And my dad was always, he was like, dude, I don't know. And then he'd have to go read, he'd have to study, he'd have to find out. And I always needed things to make logical sense. If it didn't logically line up, it was just too hard for me to believe. And so I know that to most atheists, when I come on here and I'm talking about Christianity, it's very easy to say, well, that's not logical. This guy's an idiot. So I get that element. But at the same time, like I said, if all of this stuff that I'm telling you didn't make sense inside here, like we don't have enough time for me to give you my entire brain, obviously. But if it didn't all line up and make logical sense, I wouldn't believe it either. So that's a very big element for me growing up. And I'd say that I kind of was a Christian my whole life. But I mean, over these last 15, 20 years, I've really kind of sunk into it. And like I said, I mean, even when I started TikTok, dude, I didn't really have any interest in sharing this. Even my podcast, I don't really talk about Christianity much. I mean, I've mentioned God here and there, but my podcast isn't really about that. So You know?
Okay, so it sounds like you and I had similar upbringings. As far as I grew up in church, I don't know how much you know about my story, but I'll save that for a different time. But I grew up spending most of my life as a believer, as a Christian, and now obviously I'm on the opposite side of where you sit today. So, so Adam, what made you believe that there is a God? Like what was that convincing factor?
Just all of it. I mean, combined. I've heard this question many times in my life about like, well, what's the one thing? And there isn't one. I wish I could give you one because I think that'd make things a lot easier as far as converting others. But there isn't one thing, man. It's a collection of the Bible, my belief that there's something bigger, philosophy itself, like where did time, space, and matter come from? Why is there consciousness? Why do we have morals? Why is there, if there is a right and wrong, and it's not just my opinion or your opinion, it's not just human beings' opinion, why is there a right and wrong? Who is the judge of that right and wrong? Who set that standard? And so there's looking throughout history. There's a lot of things in the Bible, like me and Jeff just talked about, that you can't prove. Like I'm never going to be able to prove to him that people live to be 900 or 1,000, but it's written down outside of the Bible on top of being in the Bible. And the fact that most of the things in the Bible that can be shown or known are true, and the things that aren't shown or known are either believed to be true or believed to not be true. But nothing in the Bible, you can't show anybody anything and says, see, the Bible lied or it's definitely wrong. We just have beliefs that it could be wrong based on other information. So it's just a giant collection. And like I said, I mean, to sum it up, all of these things are puzzle pieces. And if you just throw them on the table, none of them make sense on their own. But if you put all of them together and line everything up, science, logic, history, morals, consciousness, a higher, all of these things, and just personal experience too. I mean, I try not to even bring that up because it's anecdotal. So it doesn't really matter. I could tell you all day about my own personal experience. It doesn't really matter. But all of those puzzle pieces are showing me a very vivid image of what I believe. And that's just why I defend it the way I do. But like, I never try to go onto an atheist post and just attack them and say, you're stupid for this. You don't believe, blah, blah, blah. I respect your belief, dude. And I totally understand why you believe what you do. And I mean, I don't know your personal story about what got you away from God. I honestly think it's unfortunate that you came to that conclusion, but I fully respect it. You have every right to believe what you do. And I'm sure you have very valid, good reasons, just like I do for my belief.
Well, actually, I don't believe. I lack belief. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, that's my favorite. I lack a belief. Yeah.
So let me try.
Means that you believe in the not, which is not believing. But go ahead.
I know. I was.
Yeah, I know.
A little bit of sarcasm there.
Yeah,
but
gotcha.
What I'm trying to get down to is, and I understand all of those things because I was once in that place, right, where all the things you kind of went through. But I can tell you, when I was a believer, and most of the believers that I spoke to then and still even encounter today, yes, there's philosophy and there's all the arguments for a God, when we get down to creationism and all of that. But there's usually one or two things, like when Adam looks in the mirror, or when I was a believer, when I looked in the mirror, there was one, maybe two things that really, really cornered or propped up that belief, and it made us believe. It caused us to believe, and that's what I'm looking for. Outside of the arguments and the debates and all that, when you're just by yourself as a human, what is it that convinces you or makes you believe that there is this God?
Man, I wish I could sum it up better. I don't know. I mean, it's all of those things. It's like if I look outside and I see how gorgeous the sky looks, or how perfect DNA makes everything, and how every animal and plant.
Can I stop you just real quick, because I don't want to cut you off, but I just, for the conversation purpose, because I'm trying to make sure that I'm proposing the question the right way. So I'm going to give you my example. Like I remember for me, when I would say all the same things that you're saying right now. As far as, it's all of these things, but when I was by myself, and it was like, what has convinced me that that there is a God. I was like, well, I know that Jesus died for my sins, and because Jesus died for my sins, I get a eternal reward, eternal heaven, and that was in my core why I believe. Now all these other things were layers; they were layers to that, right? But that was my core conviction on why I believe that there is a God. So I think I'm trying to help drill down a little more than just the onion layers. Like I want to get to the core.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I'm not trying to like dance around the thing. I'm just saying, like in general, it is kind of I mean, it's deep seated. You know what I mean? It's in there. It's not just like if I'm being. I mean, when I pray, I do feel like I'm talking to somebody. I don't feel like it's just an empty thought or words, going into the abyss. I feel like there is somebody listening. I mean, like I said, I've had my own personal experience that are just not explainable in my opinion any other way other than him. But like I said, I mean, that's not something I could show anyone else or reason with somebody else because you didn't have that experience the same as I did, more than likely. So therefore, it wouldn't really matter what I said about that. Now, if I think to myself, like there's moments where I have some doubt or I guess or whatever, where I just feel like either like a bad thought will come into my head or something, but then it just usually shakes right off. And then I go, well, no, you don't believe that because of this, and this. Like I feel if I'm trying to narrow it down, I guess, is I feel unbelievably blessed. And I don't say that arrogantly. I don't say that like I'm better than anyone. I say that meaning I really do feel like I've had a great amount of favor come my way because of the person that I give the thanks to. I never take the credit. I always think that all these good things and even the bad, because there's times I know a lot of Christians that are like, oh, well, yeah, when the good things happen, it's God. When the bad things happen, it's Satan. And a part of that I do believe, but at the same time, there's a lot of things that we go through in life that are bad, but they lead to something good. And I remember as a kid, my dad always told me, he said, you're going to, he's always had a filthy mouth. He said, you're going to get screwed along the way. You're going to get effed along the way, but the end result will always be perfection because of who's on your side. And after 36 years of living, I've never seen it any other way. And it's not just that he told me that, it's that I also believe the Bible and history and science and logic and philosophy and all those other things. You add all that in, it just adds the layers, like you said. So at my core belief, I really do feel like there is a higher power, like it does explain the history of what we see. And we'll have to get into it another time about the 900 years and the flood and all that, because that's a whole other, I mean, that we could have another.
Yeah, I have no desire to
no,
do
I know
that.
it. I'm not getting into that. I'm just saying in general. But like, for instance, it's so many things, dude. I wish I could just boil it down to one or two things and be like, yeah, these are the two big ones. But if Jesus isn't who he said he is, that still doesn't mean God doesn't exist. It just means that my faith is in the wrong part of it. So, but I do believe that Jesus is who he says he is, and that he did die the way he said he did, especially since we do have a ton of historical writings about it, not just the Bible and not just Josephus and Tacitus. There are many smaller, not as well-known people that have written about this, because otherwise Josephus and Tacitus weren't for many, many, many years later. If nobody else was writing about this, how would they have ever heard about it? How would they know about it? So it was clearly written down and talked about all around the land for it to even get to the point of being 100 years later for some famous historian to write it. But the point is, there are so many layers and details and unexplainable things without God that it just logically makes the most sense. So it's not that I choose to believe out of like comfort for heaven. It's that I fully am bought in because of everything that I've seen and experienced and read and, witnessed, I guess, or whatever. And it's just all of it. It's the whole, it's the more pieces I'm putting into this puzzle, the more clear as day it looks. And that's I don't say that arrogantly. I don't say that like I'm better than anyone or smarter than anyone. I'm just saying that is just how I see it.
Okay. And so by definition, belief is something that is accepted, considered to be true, or held as an opinion or something believed in. Adam, do you, just yes or no on this, Adam, do you want to believe more true things than not?
Yeah. I mean, I want to believe anything that's true. I believe.
Okay.
You know, I care about truth greatly. But yes, I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah.
And truth, according to the dictionary, is defined as the property of being in accord with fact or reality. Now, based on what you just described, is your belief system and what you just described, is that an actual pathway to us finding a truth, or is that still just a belief and an opinion?
Do you mean is belief a reliable way to find the truth?
Belief, or if you want to sub it with faith, you can. But is that a reliable way for us to find truth? Is just a belief or opinion or faith?
It can be. And I'm not saying because it's not a yes or no. That's definitely not a yes or no. Like, for instance, Christopher Columbus believed that the earth was round. He believed he was going to travel around the world. He didn't know he would. He didn't have any evidence that suggested that he would, or that the earth was definitely round. He believed it. Nobody knew at that time because there was no satellites, there was no pictures, there was no proof. So there was just belief that the earth was round based off of what other things that they saw. So the fact that he actually attempted, discovered later, he was right. So belief can lead to the truth, but I'm not saying that yes or no answer that belief is the most reliable or it's the only way or anything like that. It can lead to the truth. It could also lead to your demise.
Yeah, so that belief, or if you look at the dictionary's definition of faith, is an ultimate trust. Could that belief or faith or ultimate trust, whatever verbiage you want to use, could that lead us to untrue things?
Yeah. I mean, like, if you look at Buddhism and Islam, right? That if I'm right, I always say if. I try not to be arrogant enough to say I know I am. If I'm right, then those beliefs are clearly wrong. So if I'm right, then their faith is clearly leading them to the wrong place. So, like I said, belief can lead you to the truth, and it can lead you to false. So,
And on
Adam, you hold on just a second, so I can grab my phone. Is going to die, and I don't want it to die in the middle of this. Is there any? Can I just put it on the charger real quick?
Yep, go get it. I'll plug the rest of our shows this weekend. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, yeah, thank you.
Go ahead. So why Adam takes care of the phone, put the phone on the charger. So tomorrow, Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Adam is actually going to be back with us at TART, and he's going to be debating our friend Alex, and they are going to debate the topic, is Christianity reasonable? So I'll be there to host that, and I think this will be a great conversation with them. Then at 9 p.m. In the evening, Eastern Standard Time, we're going to have the atheist mom on, and she's really got a compelling story, kind of what she's been through in her life. And if you're a parent, and whether you're a theist or an atheist, you're a parent, and you want to watch and listen to that. She really has a remarkable story. And then, excuse me. Then on the 17th, the 17th month. That one. Low, your boy. That one's going to be a blast. If you want to be there for that one, you want to be there for low, your boy. That's going to be a blast. That show's going to be amazing, and he's looking forward to it. He's hyping it up on TikTok and everything. And we'll don't worry. We'll have some serious conversations. But he's got a great personality. We're gonna have a ton of fun with him on there. And I know Jeff is looking forward to that one and getting it in with low, you boys.
I can't wait. Tonight was good. Just wait. I've just been warming up. I'm so amped to go on evolution and why atheism is a religion and the flood. I mean, I can talk about the flood is probably my favorite subject in the Bible. As you know, you have your stories that are your favorite. The flood is mine.
Yep, I know. And I actually love the flood too, but I love hearing you talk about it. So I don't even touch it that often because I know you.
That's my thing. You stay away from it. That's mine. You can You can
Abraham
have
and
child sacrifice. You can have child sacrifice.
Yeah.
I get
Yep.
flood.
Yep.
And then Pasta gets he can have that story where the dude was supposed to impregnate his brother's wife, but he jizzed on the floor instead and then got eaten by a lion. That's the story that Pasta gets.
Oh boy. Oh boy. But no, it's gonna be a fun weekend.
True story. It's in Genesis. Look it up. I'm not joking.
It's in the book. It's in the book, man.
It's true.
It's like EA Sports. It's in the book.
Who told you that? Seriously, who told you that?
All right, let's get back in with Adam here. I think he's ready to get. But no, Adam's been like I said earlier, he's been a rock star so far, and we've had all of us have had a great conversation with Adam so far, and he's been rolling with all the punches tonight. But Adam, if I could kind of jump into the next part of kind of what I was asking there is just kind of go back because I know you had to jump up for a minute, but talking about definition of belief and faith, and does it get us to can it take us to not correct things, and can it and what are all the directions that just a strong belief or a faith can take us? I have conversations. Well, one in my professional field, I meet probably hundreds of people a week just in my professional life. But then even like on Discords and stuff, I meet different people from different beliefs. And Adam, they say the same things that Christians say. Whether it's Muslim or whatever. And I usually go to Islam because it's an Abrahamic God. It's the most relatable, I think, to Christianity, and that in that measure anyway. Why is your faith or your belief, as we were talking about, something that is accepted, considered to be true, or held as opinion, something believed in? Why is your belief, opinion, or faith correct and theirs is incorrect when they have similar documentation to their figures or characters in their book?
Well, there's several things with that. There's one, when it comes to Islam, they reference the Bible, the Old Testament and the New Testament. They know about Jesus. They even talk about Jesus. So even if you wanted to think that Islam was the right one or the true religion, even they're acknowledging that Jesus existed and who he was and that he was a special prophet. I don't believe that I think that they think he either still lives or that he either never died or that he did die, but he's still dead or something like that. I never remember where they stand exactly on Jesus. I'm not the biggest Islam, I'm not a super expert when it comes to that, but I do know I knew little things about it. And I know the fact that, one, Jesus was known to perform miracles. It wasn't just talked about by him. It's written, there's outside sources. But also, Muhammad claimed himself that he could not do miracles. They were attributed to him 150 years after him. So the weird thing about him going to the moon and all this stuff, he admitted he couldn't do those things. But yet somehow it's written in anyway that he could, even though he himself said he couldn't. But then also, think about who he was as a person, Muhammad. He was married to like somewhere between a 7 to a 10 or 11-year-old. He was married to like an 8-9-year-old girl. He was offensive to people. Sorry, go ahead.
As far as that's concerned, that's a whole nother rabbit trail.
I'm just saying why I believe so much in Jesus. I'm just trying to show you why Jesus to me is the one why.
I hate and I don't like talking over, but when those things start popping up, as far as the Muhammad and the girls and all that, is it disgusting? Yes. Do I believe in it? No. But it does not validate the Bible God. It does not, in my opinion, doesn't validate.
Well, you just asked why over that one. That's all. That's why I was only bringing all that up.
Okay, so that leads into actually that probably more properly leads me into my second to last question here, is if Adam, we had this conversation tonight, and I was like, you know what, Adam made a lot of good points tonight. I believe in Adam's God. I'm a theist. I believe in his God. I don't believe in this Jesus guy, though. According to your as a Christian, as a Bible believing Christian, I still don't get to go to heaven, even though I acknowledge that your God exists. I still don't get to go to heaven because I don't buy in to the Jesus character. So again, how are we convinced that this God is true or this Jesus is true? Because now we have a huge problem, because either they're all in one or they're not.
You mean like about the Trinity?
Yeah.
Well, that's a very confusing one. That's very difficult for a lot of people to wrap their head around, because it's like saying, how are three people one person? And so it's very difficult for people to understand that. That was very difficult for me for years. For many, many, many years, I was like, I don't get it. Like, I get what the Bible's saying. I get that God is saying, that Jesus said, I and my Father are one. So he did claim to be God. A lot of people think he didn't, but he did. The fact that he's claiming to be God. And then there's also the other part of it, the Holy Spirit. And the way I can best explain it, and I don't even know if this is even good enough, but the way I describe it is, God was so forward thinking, and our ability to reason, logic, and even the science that was going to come around in our day and age. I mean, he knows that where we're going to get to in science and what we're going to think. And think about it like this. Every single element in the known universe has three forms, just like God does. Every single element has solid, liquid, and gas. And the way I describe it is like this. If you take a cup and go scoop out water out of a pond and you set it on your counter, you got a cup of water there. That's the first form. If you take that exact same cup of water and put it right in the freezer, it now freezes. It's the same water, but it's in a totally different form.
And Adam, respectfully, we can test and demonstrate that. So I agree with that.
I'm just saying how you can explain three forms in one being. I'm not saying that's how I can prove it. I'm just saying that's how I can best describe how you could get three forms, three natures in one being. And so you have three different elements. Every element has three different forms, but it's the same element. It's the same atoms, the same molecules, but you have three different forms of it. And so that's the way I look at God, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, the Holy Spirit.
And you have I don't want to get into contextual, biblical contextual arguments, because again, we can go on that for hours. But what I do want to say is that the New Testament is full of this God creator, and we don't know of Jesus or the Holy Spirit by name until the New Testament. So I think it's probably without getting into debate lingo, that I think that's special pleading to try to tie the three together like that. But still, going back to my original question, if I become a theist, I'm not a Christian, I become a theist, Adam, and I say, Adam, I believe in your God. You've convinced me. Your God is real. But I'm not buying into the historical Jesus. I'm not finding enough data or information to support that claim. Does that mean I still go to hell?
Well, it's the whole idea of Jesus coming back and dying for our sins is to be the sacrifice that we needed to cleanse all the bad that's in us. And so if you don't spend any amount of time trying to get to know God, which Jesus is, then you're going to be separated from God. Now, if you believe in a totally different type of God, think about what he did. I mean, if the story is true, and like I say, I always say if Jesus is true, or if that story is true, the whole Bible, then the whole idea of Jesus being here is that he's God. It's the idea that the ultimate being of the universe came down and took on the suffering and the sin that his own children, humans, took on, that the sin that we have, the evil that we deal with, all the problems and negativity and awfulness of this world, Jesus is supposed to be the redeemer of that. And it's a form of God. Now, if you don't believe in that element of it, it's people look at it like, if I don't believe in Jesus, am I going to burn for eternity? That's usually how I hear it. And it's not that you have to understand the idea of what hell actually is. It's the separation from God. And if Jesus went through, or if God sent his son, which is Jesus, which is another form of himself, if he basically sent himself down here to die for you and you reject that, why would he want you to spend eternity with him? If you don't want to get to know the one important element of why he did what he did, then that's a problem.
And
You know,
I actually think that you're highlighting my point. Is if I accept God the creator that of the Bible that says that he is all knowing and all loving and all powerful, you know, all the omnis like you spoke about earlier. If I believe in him and I buy into him, why do I need a middleman? Like, why do I need that? If I believe in this creator God that loves me and sent his son for me, why do I need the son if I just believe on him and I don't need the son?
because the son is the one that died for you. The son is him. See, that's the hard part for people to understand.
No. And I promise I'm not trying to. I'm trying to drill down to a point. I don't need the middleman. If I believe in the God, if I believe in the God that he loves me and wants me to spend eternity with him, right? I know that, you know, that there's that single belief there that I know that this God loves me and he wants me to go to heaven and spend eternity with him. I don't need that. Like I don't need a middleman for that.
And I guess that's where we are going to disagree, because I think you do. He's not a middleman. I know you say that like because he's a human, you know, he is in human form and all that. But the reality is if the story is true, then Jesus is God. He's not the middleman. There's a reason why he says to pray to Jesus, not to pray. Like, this is the thing I have a problem with Catholics. It's not that I think Catholics are wrong, you know, are bad people or anything like that. It's just that they do certain traditions in their church that are a problem. And I mean, the Bible says it. They'll pray to Mary and they'll pray to the saints like they are some kind of middleman to get to God, and they're not. Jesus is the quote unquote middleman. I don't think he's a middleman, but he is the way. He says, "I am the truth, the light. I'm the way." And the fact that God chose to take on a human form and take on the suffering that he did for us, when you reject Jesus, I guess I don't want to say missing, but the part that I think is very important here is that Jesus is God. And when you deny him, when you reject him, especially when he's the one that did put on the sacrifice for you because he loves you so much, when you reject him, you are rejecting God. You're just looking at it as you're only accepting the Father, which is only one part of the Trinity. And see, he makes it very clear, even in the Old Testament, when he says, we created man in our image, that's not a solo one and only thing. That is, he is a solo God. This is why it's so complicated. And this is why I explain it with the water thing. He is a solo entity, but he has three forms, and Jesus is one of them forms. So when you reject Jesus, when you reject God in Jesus's form, you're rejecting the sacrifice. You're rejecting the only one who lived a sinless life, who could pay the debt for all of our sins. So it's not that you're rejecting the middleman. You are rejecting God, because if that story is right and true, then you are rejecting God. You're not just rejecting a middleman. And that's why I think it's so important that people understand who Jesus is. But at the same time, here's one big thing that I rarely bring this up ever, but I want people to understand this, that I did one TikTok on it, but other than that, I rarely ever talk about this, is that God is people think of him as like some ruling dictator and he's awful and he's mean. What people don't understand about him, throughout the Bible, you see how loving he actually is. He just has rules. And if you have to abide by these rules. Now, when you break these rules, you're guilty. So you are punished by that. Now, I know you say eternal punishment and it's fire and flames. We don't know exactly what hell all consists of. But what I do know is this. God has these rules. He's made it very well clear that he cares about all people. He loves all people. He sent his son, which is essentially himself, if you understand the whole Trinity thing, to die for you. You reject that, you're rejecting God himself. Now, I always bring up this very valid point that God is so loving and righteous. He's the standard of righteousness, the standard of justice. He is not going to send, like, for instance, no baby goes to hell. It's very well documented in the Bible. When you are when you are under the age of knowing, it's called, basically, when you don't know right from wrong, you're not held accountable for doing wrong things because you don't know better. But when you do know what's better, you do know right from wrong, or when you know better, basically, that is when God starts to hold you accountable. See, if you are I've said it before, like if you are on a remote island and you've never heard about Jesus, you don't know that Jesus is even a thing because you've never heard of it. You don't have that kind of technology or that knowledge. God is not going to punish you for that. And that's what a lot of atheists think. Atheists, a lot of them, I'm not accusing you, but I'm just saying a lot of them that I've run into have said, like, well, somebody on a remote island that's never heard of them, they're going to hell. And I don't believe that, because if you know anything, if you have the opportunity to know Jesus and then you reject him, that's a problem. But if you've never in your life even heard the name Jesus, God is too caring and loving and full of justice and righteousness to make you go to hell for all of eternity for something that is completely out of your control. He's not like that. And you see his character and his nature throughout the Bible. It's absurd to think that he would send somebody to hell when it's completely out of their hands. You have to willingly deny who he is in order to receive that kind of eternal separation from him. If you've never had a chance to know him, he's not going to eternally separate you forever.
So, in short, yes or no? Do I have to believe in three gods at once, or can I pick one of them?
Well, if you're believing in the Trinity, then you're believing in all three at once. But if you pick and choose, like I believe in God, but not the Holy Spirit, not Jesus, I mean, especially knowing that you grew up in church, you know the Trinity, you know the story very well. If you take it upon yourself to willingly want to reject that, knowing full well what the story is, then I think that that's a problem. I mean, in the long term, but that doesn't mean that there's no hope for you and that it's too late and that you're destined to hell or anything like that. I would never say something like that. But I do think that the more you know, the more you're held accountable. Just like anything, really.
All right. So my last question then, and again, yes and no, because I asked this earlier and we kind of went off. So I just want a simple yes or no, and just be brutally honest. So if I believe in the Bible God, and I'll even say I buy in the Holy Spirit, but I do not find the evidence to support the claims of Jesus being virgin, having a virgin birth, being crucified and resurrected. If I buy two out of the three, yes or no, would I go to hell?
It depends on your relationship, man. It's not that simple. This is the thing, is I know you want me to say yes or no, but it is not that simple. I can't just say yes or no. That's like saying, does your wife know you cheat on her? It's like, well, if I say no, then it's like you're saying that you do cheat on her, but she doesn't know. If you say yes, then you're like, okay, well, yeah, she knows. The point is, it's almost a trap question. I'm not saying I'm not accusing you of doing that on purpose. It just is, because I can't know whether or not you're going to go to hell. All I know is that God knows your relationship with him. He will hold you accountable based on your intentions, your knowledge, and what you believe and what you trust. I would never claim that you're going to heaven or hell. I have no idea. And I mean, you could live your whole life denying him, hating him even. But if you get to the end of your life and you genuinely ask for forgiveness and you genuinely want to be with him, not you just say it out loud and you just make sure people hear it. If you genuinely, intentionally believe it, I fully believe that he will redeem you and he will take you with him, because you genuinely, your heart absolutely means it. And he knows that. He knows your heart, regardless what's being said today.
Yep. And I know Paul's jumping in, so we'll wrap here. So I'll say this. It's not a question, just a statement, Adam, and maybe you and I can pick up on this topic here in the future. But
yeah,
I think it's in Romans. It says that no one comes to the Father but through me. That was, or no, not Romans. it was in the Gospels, but no one goes to the Father but through me. So I think there's a very clear indication that you can accept 2 out of the 3 of the Trinity and not make it to the Father according to the text. But I want to wrap up by saying, dude, you were a damn rock star tonight, and you came ready to play ball, and we appreciate it and love to have you back on. And I'd love to, even on the side, chop up with you, Ben, and yeah, have some fun, have some conversations. But the Pasta Man, Blaka.
Hey, what's going on, guys? I didn't get a chance to share Adam's channel when we first came on, and yeah, man, Adam, what a great job you've done tonight, man. Kudos.
Thanks,
bro.
Thank you, I appreciate it. You guys have all been awesome too, man. Even Jeff, man, I still love you, brother. I know you're passionate, man, but you guys were all awesome. I appreciate you guys even having me on. It's been awesome. Fruitful.
Yeah, we gotta add a little bit of spice, because we have some folks in the chat that they like that kind of back and forth.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I'm gonna pull up your YouTube channel here.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Adam Rich.
So
I gotta do something about
talk us through
homepage, man. What the? Like I said, when I first started, it was really rich for my podcast, and the only generic image that was on the computer was that, and I never changed it. So, guys, forgive me. I'm not all about money. I know it probably looks like that, but
no,
it's purely for the last name. I promise.
No, it's cool. Now, I actually took a moment to listen to one of the podcasts. It's really cool. You have a knack for almost like a radio type of thing. I think you're pretty cool. You're captivating. It's easy to listen to. So take this moment to take this opportunity to chat about it.
Oh, well, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate the kind words from all of you. Absolutely. For sure, man. Definitely. No, on my podcast, I don't really talk about God a whole lot. Because when I started it a year and a half, this has been kind of more of a recent thing. TikTok is what really kind of brought this out. So, I mean, being on this show is new, I mean, like, I've never done like an actual like formal debate or anything like that about it. I've always enjoyed this topic. And, but to be honest with you, for a good portion of my life, I've kind of kept it secret. I mean, people close to me kind of knew, but I don't really talk about it a lot. Now I do, but I mean, I never did for most of my life, because I don't like forcing it on people, man. Like, I'm one of these people, even as a Christian dude, I'm not a big fan of like, when you go to like a fair or you're walking down the street and some guy's on the corner screaming about God. I don't really think that that's a huge effective thing, but some people do stop and some people listen. It's just, I feel like the majority of the time you see something like that, the first instinct is, well, that guy's psycho. That guy's a nut job. So most people aren't going to even listen anyway. So I've never really been very outgoing about my faith until recently on here. And honestly, TikTok is what really brought it out, man, because just interacting with people on TikTok, and it was kind of a newer platform that not a lot of people that know me were on. So it was almost like my escape to be able to talk about this stuff without having all the friends and family like, oh, you're doing this now. And, it was just a way to keep me away from it. But the podcast in general, I started because I just like helping people, man. I help liking people be more confident, being more happy, finding out what they like to do. Like, you guys all you started this show and you guys are killing it on here. And I'm sure you love doing it. I mean, you guys do it all the time and you're really good at it. So I like helping people find out what it is they like doing and what they're good at, and just kind of leaning into it, because I think there's so much depression and anger and bitterness and sadness in the world that you need to find what you like, because there's not a lot of time, and I work at a place where I've been there for almost 16 years, and it's not my passion is the nicest way I can put it. But,
sure.
But I didn't realize until I was too old and I have a family to take care of that. If I would have known when I was younger to just lean in to something like this, or to lean into podcasting, if it was even a thing when I was young, I would have done that. But I was under the impression that the best way to go was to just find a good job with a good 401k and good health insurance. And that's the way to live your life. And it's not.
I understand. I totally understand. And you know what? We can kind of meet in the middle here. I'm with you. I think these types of things we can see eye to eye on, but I'm going to end with this. I'm going to ask one question. You're kind of forcing my hand here. Would it be fair to say, though, that from your worldview perspective, that what you're experiencing right now is God's plan?
What do you mean, being on the show, or what do you mean?
No,
What
the
part
whole,
of it?
like what you basically just described, like the fact you've been there for 16 years, all that stuff.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it certainly wasn't mine. I know that much. Because, like I said, man, for about
Right.
34 years, I've kind of hidden it from people. I mean, the people closest to me know how I feel. I've had friends that know I'm a Christian and things like that. But, dude, I mean, you ask people at my work, half the people I work with probably have no idea. They don't. Some people know that I'm doing this just because they see I was sharing it like TikTok and on a couple other socials that I was going to be on your guys' show, just trying to plug it and stuff. And they were like, "Oh man, I can't wait! Like, I'll watch." And so I thought that was cool. But at the same time, man, it's like I've always, since I was a kid, I've always liked this topic. I've always kind of believed, and the older I get, the more I learn that helps me believe it even more. Like, I've never learned something that's been like, man, that really makes the whole Bible false to me. It usually, for me, almost helps. The more science I learn, the more philosophy and things like that, it just helps. And I've always kind of wanted to get to this point of being able to be on shows or talk to people or stand in front of. I'd love to be doing speeches or being in an auditorium and but not a preacher. I've never really wanted to be like my own preacher at my own church or nothing. I just would rather like travel and talk or do it TikTok or YouTube or something like that. But I just never knew how. And honestly, I guess when I was younger, I was just kind of scared to do it. And
Yeah,
so TikTok has helped me just kind of get it out there. But to answer your question.
You don't come across preachy, but you do have the knack for speaking. So I could see that. And real quick, just before we wrap, atheism, is it a religion?
I don't know. It's hard for me. I mean, I think that it depends on how you define religion. I think that it's a belief. I think it's definitely a belief. I know people say all the time, it's a lack in belief. I lack a belief. But the reality is this: if you lack a belief in something, it's that you don't believe it. If you lack a belief in unicorns, it's because you don't believe them. You
Sure.
don't believe in them. And
Yeah.
so I think honestly, I think that when atheists say that, it's just an easy way out to have to describe or have to tell people that you believe that there's no God. I understand saying you don't believe that there's evidence for it, and I get all that. But once again, you have to say, I believe that there's no evidence for it. So I
Right.
think that I believe agnostic. If you believe that there could be something, then I
Sure.
think you're agnostic, not really atheist. But if you claim to be an atheist, you're basically claiming no God, anti God, no anti-God is basically what your belief is. So I believe it is that, but I don't believe necessarily a religion, because you don't pray to atheism.
Right.
You don't
I
go
see what
to
you
a
mean.
church of atheism. So you just
Right.
you just it'd be like if I started a church about anti-leprechaunism, then yeah, you could say that's a religion. But
Right.
so I wouldn't call it a religion, but I will say I believe it's a belief.
It's a belief. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you mind doing a quick thought experiment with me, or like a little quick?
Yeah. Shoot.
Could you ask me a few questions about like whether or not I believe in God or anything like that? Just
Yeah.
like say, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Well, do you believe in God? And if not, why? What is the biggest reason for you that you don't believe in God, or what keeps you from believing there's a God?
Sure. Okay. So I do not believe in God. So I would answer no to the "do I believe in God" question. And I don't believe in God because I don't think there's sufficient evidence.
Okay. Now, why? What kind of evidence would you need
To believe in God?
Yeah.
I would need something that's repeatable, demonstrable, and like something that could be across the board. Like if it came out as a peer reviewed, hey, this is a thing now.
Okay. Now, would you say that that's how you treat everything in life? That you only believe it if you can demonstrate it?
Absolutely not,
Okay. Then why do you stop it with God?
because it's extraordinary.
But does everything that's extraordinary require extraordinary evidence?
Yes,
Now, why do you say that?
because if it's extraordinary, for like let's stay with the God or at least supernatural, something supernatural. So if I'm now to believe that there's a higher power that has control over what I do, whom I sleep with, what clothes I wear, you know, and I can't touch it, I can't see it or anything like that. And all I'm to base my belief on is either I have to go off of what my parents are teaching me, or a person that's got authority over in a church over me, or a book I've read. Then I'm going to need slightly better evidence than that.
Okay, now what about, how do you think that the universe got here?
I don't care.
Well, but you believe that the universe has a beginning, right?
But I don't care, though. It doesn't control my life.
So then the only thing, okay, then so what you're saying is you only believe in things that you care about.
No, not at all. I would, if somebody presents it to me like, hey, how do you think the universe got here? I could like delve into it. I could look into it and maybe get satisfied with the findings. I could like look into it and see, oh, well, this group of much more educated people than myself conclude, X. And I could lean on it and say, okay, well, I'm pretty sure they know more than myself, but do I have to worship it? Is it saying that this is where I go after I die? Is this like a belief system where it controls what I do in my life? It's a little bit different.
So would you say that the big reason for not believing in God is because of the idea of having to worship it and what might happen after this life?
No, that's almost a separate subject. I just don't believe in God because I don't think there's sufficient evidence. That's it. That's the end of it.
Now, what about now? And this is it'd be a broad question for me to ask what constitutes evidence, but do you think that the evidence that I brought forth today is compelling enough to at least consider that God could be the reason for the universe and life and consciousness and all these things?
I think it's a warranted philosophy because a lot of people obviously adhere to it. It's a very popular religion. It's the most popular religion in the world. So apparently, people side with your worldview. I would never deny that. But there's also a lot of people on my side of the fence. So there are people that are slightly more skeptical that are presented with standards of evidence that they think are poor. And what's missing in the conversation is that it is a level of faith that you have to have. So
you understand faith is also, it's not just belief, but faith also means trust.
Correct.
Like when we say we have faith in God, that doesn't necessarily just mean a belief. It means that we trust in him as well.
Correct. I would agree.
Okay. And so would you say do you have faith in anything?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I'm glad you answered it because there's so many, I can't tell you how many atheists I've run into where they said, no, I don't apply faith. I don't believe in faith. I don't use faith. And I was like, well, no, you use faith every day. You just aren't even realizing it.
Do you mind?
Every time you get in your car and turn the key, you assume it's going to start.
Sure. I was going to say, do you mind if we define it though, so that we're on the same page?
Yeah.
Because in the modernized, dictionary, there's primarily two versions of faith. So
mm-hmm.
if we look at and I'm going off of like if we open a dictionary today, not from like the Greek days, right? So the first definition of faith is right here. It's complete trust or confidence in someone or something.
Right.
So I would argue that this is probably the most commonly used faith in day-to-day life. It has nothing to do with religion or
right. Yeah.
It could be like, hey, I have faith my dude at the coffee shop's going to make me my coffee that he always makes me,
Right.
He might not, but I have faith that he's going to, or the car thing you just brought up.
Yeah.
But then there is a second definition, and this would also line up with the religion that you just spoke of earlier, because I do have arguments with atheists because it just depends. Like religion in the sense of what Christianity is versus I do something religiously. You can say to somebody, I do things religiously. It doesn't necessarily.
You do it over and over. You do it. Yeah.
There's different definitions of the term religious.
Right.
But the second version of faith is right here. It's a strong belief in God or in the doctrines of religion based upon spiritual apprehension rather than proof, like dogma, for example.
Yeah.
So you got separate versions of it. And then if you really want to get into biblical, you go to the pistis in Christianity and in the New Testament. This is the one a lot of hardcore Christians will pull out. Anyhow, there are different versions of faith. I always refer to the first version. I'm never, in my vocabulary, I'm never using the religious form of faith ever. It doesn't come up. So it's important that we get definitions on the table.
Yeah. And that's why but I do think it's important that you did mention all three definitions, because when
Sure.
you use the word faith, you are allowing for any of those three definitions to be used by using the word faith. So I
Yeah.
understand what you mean. Like, a lot of times when Christians are talking about faith, they're talking about the belief in God. But I'm just saying, in general, faith does mean different things. And when we talk about faith, we are using multiple definitions. We're not just believing in God. We are also trusting or having confidence in someone or something, which is,
Sure.
and that's the only reason why I brought that up, is because it's not just the one definition. It is the multiple. But when I, like, to ask you, I know you said that you don't, would you like there to be a God? Like the God that I described, would you like that God to exist?
That's actually a pretty good question. I don't have a dog in the fight, because I've lived long enough. I'm 40, and I've lived this long. I've never been religious ever. I've always been agnostic, atheist, you know. And
Now, have you studied into not just philosophy, like ancient Greek philosophy, but have you ever looked at guys like William Lane Craig or John Lennox or Frank Turek, and understood the philosophy that they put in to why we have anything, why their universe exists, why there's because I guess what I'm trying to get at is, I know you said that you don't find that there's sufficient evidence,
Mhm.
but I it's too broad of a statement to ask you, what do you mean by evidence? Because all the things that I'm including logic and philosophy as evidence. Like, if something, like, for instance, when I was talking about the beginning of the universe is for as far as we can see, as far as we have any reason to believe, the beginning of time, space, and matter did start at the Big Bang. Now, there might be something beforehand, and I do believe that there is something beforehand. I believe it's God, and I believe that it's his realm. I believe that before he created the universe, there was him, and he
Sure.
always was. Now, so either way, we both believe that there was something before the universe.
Right.
The difference is philosophically, I have a reason for that, or I have excuses or examples, I guess,
Yeah.
as
Sure.
to what would be before the universe, and they're logical. Now, I'm not saying that that means that they're right. I'm just saying that they do logically line up.
Right.
Whereas saying I don't care, that's okay to do. You're 100% in your right to do so, but it's not an answer. And that's the only reason why I push back on that, is because if you think that there's no evidence, that's why I'm presenting the logical philosophy of why we would even have a universe. Why is there the beginning of time and space and matter? Why is there life? There is no explanation in an atheistic worldview for how life got here. There's just beliefs and thoughts, and maybe if we put these chemicals together in a soup, maybe it'll happen. But we've never been able to demonstrate that. We've never been able to demonstrate anywhere in the history of time the beginning of a consciousness outside of a birth. But we've never been able to show how consciousness could happen. We've never been able to show how life could happen. And we've certainly never been able to show how a universe could happen. We just have beliefs. So when I insert God, I know people will say, well, that's the God of the gaps. But I'm not giving you God of the gaps. I'm giving you exact logical reasons for what he did and why he would do it, which
Oh, yeah.
would fill those gaps. And so I'm just asking, like, do you find that that is at least putting into question that maybe God could exist?
Yeah. I think I find philosophy and philosophical arguments to be quite interesting. And all at the same time, though, it must be fair, I also view them as a form of mental masturbation, and sometimes time consuming, because
That's why I like this show.
yeah, because you can really go deep
Yeah.
and you can sway and get lost and go away from facts and simplicity, and you can go a little bit too far away. Now, by the way, I do like William Lane Craig. I think William Lane Craig is a beast at debate. He's a phenomenal debater. So if anyone
How
says,
about Frank Turek? Do you know? I don't mean to cut you off, but Frank Turek is an awesome one. And do you know who that is?
well, I would respectfully disagree. I don't think he's a poor debater. I just don't think he's anywhere in William Lane Craig's league.
I agree as far as debating, but I mean the evidence that he puts forth for the beginning of the universe and why, like, he has a 2 to 3 hour like YouTube. I mean, he's got a few of them actually, but his arguments that he puts forth for the beginning of everything and why God best explains it is just phenomenal. There's no way I could sum it up in a 2 minute, 5 minutes or whatever to show you. But I really, man, if I could send you a link to that, I think if you just took some time, I don't expect you to watch it all tomorrow or in one day, but it's a long thing. But dude, it is so compelling and it's so logical and makes so much sense that I think you would at least be interested in it, even if you didn't agree after it's over.
Sure. We'll put it this way. I can acknowledge that people like him, and it's the same with William Lane Craig. I don't agree with his philosophy, but I can acknowledge that if I was a CEO of a sales group, but I wanted like a head debater to debate pineapples, I would hire William Lane Craig. He is a beast.
Yeah, he is good.
Yeah,
John Lennox is pretty awesome too. He debated Dawkins a few times, and
oh yeah,
those were awesome.
There are some phenomenal Christian debaters. There's no denying that. But I liken debating though to give them another subject. I think they would be equally as good if they studied it. I think debating is a skill set.
Yeah, I agree.
So, and William Lane Craig is a very smart man. I've actually argued with atheists about him, but I think they get confused. I think they think that I'm supporting his belief, and there's a difference. You can acknowledge somebody is good at what they do.
Yeah, if just because you disagree with them on one thing doesn't mean you have to throw out everything they say and do.
Yeah, absolutely. But what I'll tell you, and just to circle back around to the original thing, to me, atheism. Or the term atheism or atheist, it just simply addresses one thing. It's like you and I are the perfect example of this. So if I was to ask you, do you believe in a God or gods, which you've answered already, you do, you're a Christian. So that to me would mean that you believe in a monotheistic worldview. So you're a theist. You'd be a theist by definition. You don't have to accept it. I don't argue with people who are like, call me a Christian, don't call me a theist.
No,
that's fine.
Same thing.
But yeah,
kind of.
Right. But also a Muslim would be a theist.
Right. Jewish or Judaism.
Judaism. Now, the difference for me, if I said no to that question, by default, I'd be an atheist.
Right.
Because I've answered, do you believe in a God? Adam says yes. Do I believe in a God? I say no.
Right.
So I'm atheist, you're a theist. So that the atheism or theism simply answers the question, do you believe or do you lack or disbelieve in that yes or no question? And the agnosticism or Gnosticism part is a subset. Do you have knowledge? Where's your knowledge at? And you answered Ben earlier, and you were very honest with Ben. You said you weren't convinced 100%, which is very honest. You said, I'm not ignorant to say I could tell you 100% that I know this. So that would mean that you have agnosticism in your knowledge, but you're really high up on your agnosticism. Like you put your money on it. You're putting all your bets on the fact that there's a God, but you're not going to go full out and say, I know for 100% certainty, because you're not ignorant. And that's honest. That's a very honest position to be. So in my opinion, and you can argue with it if you like, I would call you an agnostic theist.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair, because here's the bottom line is none of us know. We can sit up here and come up with all kinds of compelling arguments, and by no means has anything swayed me to believe less. After any conversation, I still fully believe that God exists. However, to act like I can prove that is arrogant and silly and foolish. And so technically, everyone on earth is agnostic because you don't know. Agnostic means a lack of knowledge. It means you don't have the knowledge. That Gnostic means knowledge or knowing, and we don't know. Like, you don't know that there's no God. You believe that there's no God, and I don't know that there is a God, but I certainly believe there's one. So I believe if somebody asked me, are you a theist or atheist? I would say theist. But if somebody said, are you agnostic? I wouldn't say I was agnostic, but technically I am. The only reason I wouldn't say it is because it gives off the impression that I don't believe that there's a God, but I'm not sure. And so that's what we've kind of turned that into in our society now, is that if you say the word agnostic, it basically is you saying that you don't believe in God, but there could be, or you believe that there could be something. And me, I'm saying that, yes, I would put all the chips in that there's definitely a God, but I can't physically hand that to you and prove that to you. So technically, yes, I am agnostic.
That's very fair. See, I just don't believe the current claims of any god or gods.
Sure.
That's all of them. I'm not biased in any way. And
You just believe in one less than me, right?
Connor doesn't like that argument.
Yeah.
And I'm open to evidence at any time. So I'm kind of, I do consider myself agnostic.
Yeah. Well, and I like you. I like the way you're going about this, and you're very respectful and you're very honest. And so this is why I wanted to present the whole logical and philosophy thing, because I know you said you don't care like what happened before the Big Bang, but it is a big deal. You don't have to care about it. But the point is, I don't know how you could ever get to the point of accepting that there's a God if you don't really care what happened before the Big Bang, because what happened before the Big Bang is best explained by God. But if you don't care what happened before the Big Bang, then you don't really care to know about what the best explanation is. You just know that we don't know yet. And so I think that when you add in logic and philosophy, I think it's very important, because of even if you don't care, because logically, whatever created time is timeless. Whatever created space is spaceless, immaterial. You understand all that. But the fact of the matter is, if you don't care, then I don't know how you could ever even get to the point of accepting God, because you kind of need to know what the universe isn't the beginning of all things. And I think both of us agree with that. And so if you say that you don't believe in God, well, then I would say, well, what do you believe made the universe? And you say, I don't care. Well, then that kind of ends the conversation as far as that goes. But I think it's very relevant, because if you have at least an idea or a belief in what happened before the Big Bang, then you have to explain that away by something. And that's where I think philosophy is deep, and it takes you places that science can't. As a matter of fact, science is awesome. I love science. Most people that watch my TikTok think I'm anti-science. I'm not. I'm not sold on evolution. It doesn't mean that I think it's 100% false or that it couldn't happen. I'm just not 100% sold because of a lot of the things I see. And that's a topic for another day, I know, so I won't get into that. But
Sure.
The fact of the matter is, though, is that when you insert God and you use logic and philosophy, it explains things that science cannot. And so if you are only a person that cares about science and what we can see and demonstrate and know, you're never going to get to the point of ever knowing God or seeing God, because you're only bound by what you can physically prove. And this is why I brought that up earlier when I asked you in that thought experiment, when I asked you, do you only believe in things you can demonstrate and prove? You answered correctly, because you said, no, that's not the case. And so if you would have said yes, then I would have said, okay, well then show me what you dreamed about last night, or show me your memory, because you can't demonstrate those things. You cannot show those things, but we both know they're true. We both know they exist. Now you could lie about what that dream was, but we both know if you did have a dream and you did tell me what was in your dream and you were honest about it, you can't prove it to me. You can only say it to me. And so that's why I bring that very important question up. If you're a big advocate of science and you don't care about philosophy and logic, well, then you're always going to be limited, because you're only going to accept things that are testable and provable and factual. And the reality about science is this: we are always learning things about science that change what we used to think. So to think that science is the be all end all of knowledge and it explains everything, it doesn't, and it never will. And so you have to go deeper than that and use logic and philosophy if you really want to come to a conclusion, or at least have an idea about where these other things could come from, because science will never prove a lot, at least in our lifetime. They'll never solve what created the universe or how it started on its own. Even if we created in a lab, you're still using an intelligence to then force that into production.
Right.
So we'll never know how it happened on its own. And so that's why the only reason why I was bringing up the logic and philosophy, and you were honest about it. You said you don't really care, and that's fine. I can't make you care. But I do think that you are always going to be limited in the amount of, I don't want to say belief, but if you don't care about where these things come from, then God won't ever be an answer for you. But I think that if you ever care to find out what would have created life, what would have even given us consciousness, why are we aware of anything? Why do we acknowledge anything exists? Or why are we aware of anything?
Hold,
and to
hold
think
it on
that
the
in
hold it on
mind,
the
but
Y.
I mean,
Hold it on the Y for a
go, sorry,
second.
go ahead.
No, hold it on the Y for a second.
Mhm.
I want to put a pin in your the statement you made about the dream. That's
Yeah.
that's interesting. I haven't heard that before. I'm going to put a pin in that. I haven't got anything to write with, but let's hold on to bring that back up if I forget, please.
Okay.
I like that the way you put that out.
Re-say it or bring it up later.
No, if I somehow forget in a moment, retell me the dream thing.
Yeah.
Or actually, I think I think somebody posted it. Okay. The thing I was going to ask is if your worldview didn't consist of, like, let's say, we don't know anything. We don't know what happened before the Big Bang.
Right.
But there is no, because let's not present false dilemmas. There's only two options, right? Let's take there's a million options, and
Right.
and God isn't a creator. God isn't one of them. How does your worldview get affected? Like, what's the worst case scenario for you if you just don't know?
You mean, how did the universe get here if God didn't make
No,
it?
no. Like, what? How does your life change if you just say you don't know? Because obviously, I'm living my life fine. I just, news flash.
Yeah, we can all, and that's good. Like, that's the beautiful. And see, you actually right there with what you just mentioned, that kind of proves the point that I was making about free will. You don't have to believe in God. You don't have to follow God. You don't have to do anything.
No. But let's take my position out. So let's remove me from it. I'm talking about you for a second. Like, if your worldview just, and I'm only speaking hypothetically. I don't mean to insult your position or anything. So these conversations can get a little bit odd, and I don't mean to press you in that way.
No, you're good.
But just for argument's sake, remove your position where you have a God. How does it affect your day-to-day life?
Well, for me, being that I greatly believe in him, it would affect my life immensely, I would imagine, because it would just change. I mean, one, I would have never started the TikTok that I was doing. I wouldn't be on this show right now talking to you guys. I probably wouldn't even know you guys. So it would have, I mean, there's no possible chance I could give you a number or give you a perfect scenario about what my life would look like. But I can clearly show you that it would be very much different. I wouldn't be doing the same TikToks I am. I wouldn't know you guys. Like I don't need, it's weird because I'm a very happy person in life as a whole. I mean, don't get me wrong, I get mad and I get emotions and stuff or whatever, but I'm happy in life as a whole because I feel like I have been very blessed by somebody that cares about me, and I'm very thankful to that person. Now, if that person didn't exist, maybe I would still be as happy. I certainly wouldn't be thankful to a God if I didn't know that there was a God or I didn't believe in a God. I obviously wouldn't be thankful. But, and I'm not saying that you can only be happy if you believe in God. That's not what I'm saying. But I just mean, like, my life personally would be unknowingly different in a good amount of ways because I've had so many experiences that I tie to God that I don't know what my life would look like at all without him. Now,
Sure.
saying that if I said I just don't know that there's a God, like I said, that would be basically saying that I don't believe in one almost, because if I said I don't know, then I'm probably not believing in him, but I'm saying that I can't prove him, but I still believe in him. So I still feel like I know he exists, but I don't know that I have a good answer for that. It's just, I know my life would be different. I just have no idea how. Maybe it would be better.
The best answer.
Hey, look, I don't know if I'm being honest.
No, the best answer is your honest answer, man, and I appreciate it. Okay, we're good. The last thing about the dreams. The only thing I'm a little bit curious of is, obviously, you and I can't show you my dream. You can't show me your dream, right? But I think you and I, if we were chatting, you and I could both agree that we have dreams. Like, I could tell you, hey, I could say, Adam, do you have, when you go to sleep at night and you go into deep sleep, do you have these like visions? Or if I could, even if we didn't know what the word dream was, we could describe that we go into some kind of state. We could probably describe the state that we're in, and we could understand what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Would that be fair to say?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's ways that we could demonstrate what's occurring. And then there's even methods within medical science that can track brain waves when you're actually under REM sleep.
But this is
Go ahead.
important.
No,
I'm
you-
going to let you finish. I'm sorry.
No, and by the way, I'm no expert by any means. I'm just trying to maybe put a bit of skepticism into your statement. That's all.
Well, we're talking about two different things now, though, and I'll
Sure.
show you why. I'll
Okay.
show you exactly what I mean by that.
Fair enough.
There's no doubt in my mind that me and you could talk about our dreams, and we can prove that we both have them
Mhm.
on a brainwave. Like,
Sure.
or science, you can be hooked up. Now, for instance, 200 years ago, no, what you just said, that would be false. But
Right.
in the day that we live in now, we can see that there are dreams. Now, that's different than showing me what your dream actually was. And that's what I'm saying you can't prove. Science will never be able to prove that unless for some reason, and maybe somewhere down the road, science will figure out a way to be hooked up to your brain to actually show on a screen exactly what you're saying. I don't think that that's ever going to happen, but I don't know that. So
Yeah, it's highly unlikely.
But I guess the point that I'm getting at is we can both have memories. And I can say, hey, do you remember what it's like in 12th grade, gym class, whatever? And you would go, yeah, I remember. And I would remember my own personal experiences. So we know that we have memories. So we don't need to scientifically prove that. We both know that we have memories. But can you prove what your memory is? And that's where you can't. See, if I asked you, what did you think about? What did you remember about your childhood yesterday at breakfast? You would know what you did, but there's nothing on earth that could show me what your memory looked like yesterday at breakfast. You just that's not going to happen. And so when I say we know that they're true, we know that the laws of logic are true, even if there's no human beings. Long before there was ever a human being, if there was two rocks on the planet, let's just say there was only two at the time, and there was no mind anywhere to be found in the universe, was there still two rocks on the planet? And the answer is yes. The laws of logic exist, whether there's a human mind to observe it or not. And the same thing goes with dreams and memories. You cannot prove what your dream and your memory are, but we both know they exist. And so that's the point that I'm getting at, is that science can only prove so much. Science can prove that something happened. It can't prove why or how or what exactly it entails, not in every case. And so that's why I bring up that very important question to a lot of atheists. Do you only believe in what you can testable, or what's testable and what you can demonstrate? Because if you say yes, then I can prove to you right now that you don't. You believe in things that are not testable and demonstrated and all that stuff. So the point that I'm getting at, I guess, is that if you don't apply logic and philosophy, you are going to be limited in only things that you can test and observe. And that's a very shallow water to swim in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you would agree with that. I mean, as a whole, I mean, you believe in things that you can't possibly prove. So you're already above that level that I'm talking about. But there's a lot of people that don't, man. There's a lot of people that are like, oh, I don't believe in God because you can't demonstrate him.
Hey, despite what that weird looking Oz guy says, I do believe some of the things you say, Adam.
Yeah.
I do. But hey, look, and with all that being said, Adam, and I say this to every guest that comes on, you've been my favorite guest.
And I believe it this time. I don't think you're lying this time.
Austin, man. Adam's been a blast. I don't know where Steve's gone. Is Steve still around? I'll give him 2 seconds. But
Steve, I think he's got the axe out in the backyard chopping something up.
Hey, you know what Steve said to me the other day? He said, "Hey, Pastor Mike, what's the difference between 3 missing schoolgirls and a Lamborghini?" I was like, huh? He's like, I don't have a Lamborghini in my shed. I was like, what? I was like, it's a bit dark, Steve. Anyway, here he is. Boom. There's the guy.
Ooh, there he is.
Creepy little fella.
And with that grin on the face, that's exactly what he was out there in that shed with those, without that Lamborghini.
Well, Adam, it has been a blast to have you on.
I told you another joke too, Pasta.
Oh, you did? What was the other joke? Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
The other joke was, what's the difference between a truckload of sand and a truckload of bodies? You don't load a truckload of sand with a pitchfork.
Hey, and on that note, Adam, thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow for the debate, everybody.
Yeah, guys. It'll be pretty soon. Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me on, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man, it's been fun, and like I said, tough questions, and you've handled yourself. Big shout out to some of the theists that came in the group today to support you as well. You had some TikTok fans in here. Yeah,
I didn't see it, but I appreciate anyone that's been a part of it, man. Atheists, theists, I don't care, man. I like people, and as long as you're decent and respectful, That's enough for me.
Yeah, and I gotta, hey guys, I gotta redo one of the outros. So with that being said, I'm gonna leave with Murder Shed Steve's intro as the outro.
So it's time for Q&A with Murder Shed Steve.
Wait. Can you provide evidence that a god exists?